woke up screaming. The dream had been the alley behind the noodle shop, the same alley I had died in. I tasted iron in my mouth and smelled rain in my hair and felt the cold of wet asphalt against the back of my skull. My best friend's knife was still in my back. My girlfriend was still laughing somewhere in the dark. Then the screaming was just my breath, harsh in the small room, and the rain was just the broken radiator hissing under the window. I sat up. My hands were shaking. The futon was the futon I had thrown out 2 years ago in another life. The curtain was the curtain I had let her replace because she liked the color. The walls were beige. The walls were always beige. I reached for the phone on the floor. 2022, February, 2 days before the game launched, a day and a half before the apocalypse started its slow march. I read the date 3 times before I let myself believe it. I had been dead an hour ago. Now I had 2 years. My left eye burned. The bathroom mirror caught what was wrong before I did. My right eye was the eye my mother had given me. Brown, ordinary, tired. My left eye was something else. Silver around the iris, with a black core the size of a small coin, and the core was turning, slowly, the way a wheel turns at the bottom of a well. You can't quite see the rim moving until you stare at the spokes long enough. I leaned closer. The eye looked back. I knew, the way a man knows his own pulse, that this was the thing that had brought me here. The thing I had pulled out of a stone coffin in another life and worn behind my socket and carried into the alley. The thing that had decided I was not finished. I said one word into the cracked porcelain. Reincarnation, the eye agreed. The phone in my pocket buzzed. I knew the name on the screen before I looked. I let it buzz twice more so I could decide what kind of voice to use. Then I pressed the green key and her name filled the line, and I made my mouth into the smile that didn't reach the eye that no longer needed to be polite. She asked if I had set off yet for the dinner. She told me Brett would be there. She told me she missed me. The voice was honey and the words were honey, and the sentences were the sentences of a woman who did not know that the man on the other end of the line had already buried her. I'll be there, I said. I dropped the phone on the sink and watched the silver eye watch me back. The sound of her voice was still in the room. I counted to 4. The count would be the rope I held myself together with for the rest of the year. I had bought the rope already. I just hadn't known what it was for. The villa belonged to a friend of a friend none of them remembered the name of. The patio was small. The food was good. The people were the same people who, in another life, would later identify my body to the police and decide it was not worth the paperwork. Vivian came out of the kitchen in a yellow dress I had bought her last summer. She tilted her face up, kissed the air near my cheek, asked why I was so quiet tonight. I told her I had been thinking. She laughed at the thought of me thinking. The laugh hit a frequency I would never trust again. Brett was at the grill flipping chicken wings with a pair of cheap tongs. He was 45 seconds taller than me and had the kind of face that talked to women easily. He gave me the wide, friendly nod that older brothers give younger brothers in television commercials. He handed Vivian a wing on a paper plate. His hand brushed her hand. She did not pull away. She tilted her face up at him and they looked at each other for a half second longer than people who are not sleeping together look at each other. I clocked the half second. I added it to the ledger I had opened in the bathroom an hour earlier. A girl in a blue dress with too much eyeshadow leaned across the picnic table and asked Vivian whether her boyfriend was always this dressed down. The girl looked at my black sweater the way you look at a stain on a couch you are about to throw away. Vivian laughed. The other men at the table laughed with her. A chorus laugh, a barbecue laugh, the kind of laugh that says nobody at this table is alone in their opinion. A heavyset boy across the table leaned in and said, in a voice meant to be heard, that any one of them would break a rib for a girl as pretty as Vivian. The chorus laughed again. Brett laughed loudest. Vivian's foot, under the table, found Brett's calf and rested there. I watched the muscle in Brett's jaw shift. He did not look at her. He didn't have to. Someone pushed a plate at me. I took it. The chicken was good. I ate slowly. I observed. When Vivian excused herself to the restroom, I lifted her phone from the wood beside my hand and used the silver eye to keep her from noticing the lift. The eye didn't take the phone from her. It took her perception that it was missing. She walked toward the kitchen with what she thought was her phone in her hand. I read what was in mine. 2 years of messages. 2 years of evenings I had been at work and she had been at his apartment. 2 years of plans for things they thought I would never know about. The longest message was a paragraph she had written to him at 3 in the morning on a night I remembered. I had been sick that night. She had told me she was at the office. Her message to him was about how soft his sheets were. The killing thing about reading it was not the content. The killing thing was that I remembered the night clearly, and only she had the shape of the night that was true. Brett went past me toward the bathroom about a minute after she did. He didn't look at the phone in my hand. I let him pass. I waited a count of 10. Then I closed the silver eye and opened the new layer of vision underneath it for the first time in this lifetime. The eye showed me what could be true if I asked it. I asked it to show, to everyone at the table, the version of the bathroom that was true behind its closed door. The chorus stopped laughing. A woman behind me made a sound like a door closing badly. The heavyset boy stopped chewing. The girl in the blue dress put her hand to her mouth. Inside the bathroom, the door cracked open and Vivian's face came out, flushed and seeing what the dinner table was seeing for the first time. The phone in my hand showed me her real face for the first time in a year and a half. She started to scream. The scream was not a scream of outrage. It was the scream of a woman watching her plans for the next decade burn down inside her own house. I set the phone on the table where she could find it on her way to her car. I left my share of the bill in cash beside the empty plate. I walked out of the villa into the cold evening. I did not raise my voice once. The street was quiet because it was late, and because the city, although it didn't know it yet, was in the last calm month it would ever have. I walked east. I had never walked east at this hour in this body. I had walked east on this street as a corpse, 8 months from now, in a previous life, and the corpse had not noticed which direction it was facing. I had 2 years. I needed 3 things. I needed a helmet for the game that launched tomorrow because being first into that game was worth more than anything else I would ever do. I needed money, which I would extract from a man named Marcus, who would try to rob me in roughly 72 hours. I needed a queen, who was waiting in a sealed castle in a beginner village I already had memorized. I had cash for the helmet. I had a plan for Marcus. The queen would not be a problem. I had survived the alley once. I was not going to spend the next 2 years on the wrong side of any door. I turned the corner toward the mall. The 2 staff were still pulling cellophane off the display when I walked through the doors. They looked at each other when they saw me. They had been told to start selling at midnight. They had not been told that anyone would actually be there. The taller one stepped behind the table and started the speech he had clearly memorized off a card. It started with the launch date and the marketing tagline, and a fact about the helmet's processor. I raised one finger. I'll buy one. He blinked. Sir, the launch is tomorrow morning, but I can walk you through the technical. I know how to use it. I set 3,000 yen on the table in cash because the bank would have flagged a card transaction at this hour, and I did not want any record of being here. Just the helmet. He looked at his coworker. The coworker shrugged. He looked back at me. He started the speech again from the top, as if I had walked in by accident. I have the money, I said, slower. I have the patience for one more sentence from you. Choose it well. He chose to put the helmet in the box. He put the box in a plastic bag. He handed the plastic bag to me. He looked at the silver iris in my left eye for a half second too long, and then very deliberately did not look at it again. I thanked him. I left. The bag was lighter than I had remembered, or my hands were stronger than they had been an hour ago. I couldn't tell which. I wasn't going to ask. I set the helmet on the desk, and I sat on the edge of the bed, and I looked at the silver eye in the dark window. I had until tomorrow morning before the game opened the first beginner villages. I had 11 hours and 40 minutes before someone else stumbled into the game and started taking the things I needed first. I had a list of every rare item, every hidden dungeon, every player who would later think they were lucky. The list was in my head. The list was the only thing in my head that mattered. The dinner had been a side dish. The girl in the yellow dress, the friend with the cheap tongs, the kid in the blue dress, and the heavyset boy with his rib joke. They were a side dish. Vivian and Brett were a side dish. The main course had not started yet, and the main course was not them. The phone buzzed once. Vivian's name. I let it buzz. The buzzing stopped. The phone went dark. The silver eye in the window did not blink. I lay back on the futon. I closed both eyes. The right one slept. The left one watched. I had 2 years. I had a queen waiting. I would be in her castle by sunrise. I logged in. The system showed me the 4 beginner villages and asked me to pick one. I picked the 4th. The system congratulated me on being the first player to enter the world and offered me a special privilege, one piece of hidden information about the village I had just chosen. I selected the privilege, and the system confirmed what I already knew. There was a sealed castle on the village's western edge, and the woman inside it was the strongest ghost in the entire game. The interface dissolved. I spawned into the village, cobblestone crossroads, a dilapidated inn with a hanging wooden sign, a dry well. A dozen other players were just starting to materialize behind me as the village population rolled in. The crows on the rooftop rooftops did not move when I appeared. They had been told to expect me. The village chief was the first NPC to find me. He was an old man with black spots scattered across his face, like ink dropped on paper, and eyes that gleamed faintly even in the gray light. He had the standard tutorial quest pose, hands together, slightly bowed, the kind of posture the system uses to flag a quest giver. He raised one hand to stop me. "Young man." His voice was a whisper that carried farther than it should have. "Could I ask you for a favor?" I did not stop walking. "I'm busy right now," I said. "Let me finish what I'm doing first." He blinked. He had no programmed line for being walked past. The system filed me as a player who had refused the tutorial and would be coming back later for the same quest at a steeper price. I let it file. The other newbies were forming up around the chief now, listening to the speech I had just walked through. 3 of them had hidden ghost aptitude readings the silver eye picked up at a glance. One of them carried a low A potential and didn't know it yet. I marked the readings. I kept moving. I had 12 hours before the second player to spawn into this village would think to walk west. I planned to spend them well. The path west was not a path so much as a memory of a path. The villagers had stopped using it at some point in the game's lore time, and the grass had started forgiving the stones. Animal carcasses lined the verge, small ones, mid-sized ones, the kind of carcasses that meant predators that had stopped coming back. The insects that should have been on the carcasses were not on them. The flies were not flying. The maggots were not moving. Whatever lived in the castle ahead of me had reached this far out of its walls and stopped the rot itself. I had read about this stretch of path in another life, in a forum thread written by a player who had reached the path on day 2 and not made it past the first carcass. He had described the carcasses as wrong. The system had taken his ghost as the cost of his curiosity. He had logged out shaking, posted his thread, and never come back. I did not slow down. The carcasses did not eat me. The system was not currently set to punish a man who knew where he was going. The castle came into view past a low ridge, white stone, cracked, tall, narrow windows like teeth, a door on the front big enough to fit a horse. The map flagged it in red and warned me, in 3 sentences of small print disclaimer, that this was endgame content for a level 1 player, and entry was not advised. I closed the warning. I crossed the courtyard. The grass under my boots was so dry, it sounded like paper. The doors opened for me before I touched them. The throne room was warmer than the courtyard, which was the first thing wrong with it. There was no fire and no sun, and the air was nevertheless a degree above what it should have been. Old incense in the walls, the faint copper green of metal that has been polished by the same hand for a long time. She was on the throne, asleep, or close enough to asleep that the difference didn't matter. Long black hair fell across her shoulder in a loose braid. Her robes were white silk that had not yellowed despite the centuries the system had given her. Her hands rested on the arms of the throne as if she had been about to stand up and had decided not to. The silver eye took a long moment to read her. The reading came back in pieces. She had been an empress in a country the system did not name. Her people had been slaughtered and her city had burned, and at the gate of the city, she had ended her own life rather than be taken by the soldiers waiting outside. The system had given her 1,000 years to think about it, and somewhere in that 1,000 years, she had become a queen of a different kind, on a throne in a castle no living man had crossed since the burning. The reading flagged her aptitude, triple S, and her abilities. The first ability was a queen line that could birth ghost children of her own register. The second ability was a soulmate bond, which the system explained in 3 small print sentences, and which I read once and put away. The eye finished. The silver pupil settled. Celine's eyes opened. They were the color of winter glass. They found me without searching, the way a queen's eyes find a stranger in her throne room, and they held. "Who are you?" she said. I had practiced the line 100 times in another life. I had never used it. I used it now. I came here looking for someone who has been alone for a long time. The temperature in the throne room dropped a degree. She rose. The robes shifted. The shaft of daylight from the high arched window caught on her braid, and the whole of her form became, for one instant, the kind of beautiful that the human eye registers as a warning. The silver eye in my left socket steadied me. The system flagged her killing intent at full bar. She told me, in a voice that was the cold of ice that has not yet decided whether to break, that no living mortal had walked into her throne room in 1,000 years, and that the few who had attempted the walk had not lived long enough to regret it. She asked my name. She told me I had 3 breaths to give her one. I gave her none. I did not kneel. I did not draw a weapon. I did not flinch when she stepped down from the dais and stopped a sword's length from me with one hand half raised. I held her gaze, and I let her find what was in mine: the alley, the wet asphalt, the silver eye. And I did not look away when the killing intent climbed and reached the level the system had reserved for mortals about to be killed. The killing intent stopped. It did not retreat. It stopped, and it stayed stopped. And the silence in the throne room became the silence of a queen who was working out a problem she had not been given in 1,000 years. I said one sentence into the silence: "I am not afraid of you." Her hand lowered. The system pinged. A soul bond was being offered. The system explained in 3 sentences I did not need to read that a queen-class ghost had recognized a contractor of unusual standing and was extending a bond on her own initiative. I accepted before the system had finished the prompt. The thread snapped into place behind my sternum. I felt it as a thin, warm weight across my collarbone, like a hand resting there, and then a tattoo cooling into ink, and then nothing at all. The system pinged once more. Celine's aptitude rolled from SSS to SSS+, which the small print told me was a tier the system did not normally confirm in writing. A reward landed in my inventory, a 1-tier aptitude boost applicable to the next ghost I contracted. I closed the prompts. Celine held my gaze for a long moment. Then she stepped back, slow and deliberate, and returned to the throne. She sat, her form unspooled at the edges, and the edges resolved as silver thread that flowed downward into the air between us and crossed the throne room and came to rest against my collarbone. A soft braid of ghost energy that wound itself once across my shoulder and settled. The throne sat empty. The silver tattoo on my skin was warm. She spoke from inside the bond, the way a queen speaks from inside a sword. The voice was not a sound in the throne room. It was a sound behind my sternum. "You will not regret this." I did not answer aloud. I did not need to. The bond had already heard me. The throne room was quiet. The shaft of daylight from the high window had moved across the marble while I had been standing there. Hours had passed without my noticing them. I sat on the steps of the dais and let my head rest against the cold stone of the throne behind me. I closed my eyes. I waited for dawn. I walked out of the castle at dawn. The courtyard was the same courtyard the carcasses had warned me about, except now the carcasses were gone. The system had cleaned them in the night, the way the system cleans the geography around a queen who has just changed contract status. The dead grass was still dead. The crows were still on the rooftops. They watched me go without moving, the way the crows had watched me come in. The mark on my collarbone was a pale silver thread under the skin, faintly warm. Celine was inside it the way a sword can be inside a sheath, the way a queen can be inside a king's regalia. I could feel her there in the same way I could feel my own pulse, not as a separate thing, but as a thing that was now also me. The system updated the world rankings the moment I stepped past the castle's outer wall. Player 6 paths now held a soul bond with the highest aptitude ghost contracted on the server. Specifically, the only SSS+ contracted on the server. Specifically, the first SSS+ the system had ever confirmed in writing. A flurry of first-of-server announcements. I had hidden my nickname behind, rolled past my interface, and resolved as a single line in the world chat panel. The world chat erupted. 500 players were typing at once. None of them knew which beginner village I was in. None of them knew the woman whose name was on the bond. I closed the panel. I walked east, back along the path the carcasses had used to line. The grass was forgiving the stones again, the way grass does after a fire. The silver tattoo on my collarbone moved when I moved, the way a thing does when it has decided to come along. Celine's voice arrived at the back of my skull as I crossed the ridge, not aloud, and not as a system ping, but as a kind of inner speech that the bond had made possible during the night. What do we do first? The silver eye in my left socket considered the question. The right eye considered the path. The village chief was no longer the first NPC I needed to talk to. The village chief was the second after the courtyard quest. The first thing was to get back to the village before another player thought to look west. I gave her the answer in the same inner speech register she had used. First, we get rich, she laughed. It was the first warm sound I had heard in 2 years. I came back to the village from the west side, and the village had no idea what the west side meant. The village chief was at the quest board, waiting his turn to give the standard tutorial again. He saw me, and the gleam in his eyes did the thing eyes do when they recognize a heavier ghost than they had been expecting in a level 1 player. He did not say so. He clipped a paper notice off the board and held it out to me with both hands. Difficult tier, he said. Old courtyard west of the village. village. A red dress girl. Be careful. I took the notice. I knew the notice. I had read about the notice in another life on a forum thread written by a player who had failed it. I knew the woman in the courtyard was a B-grade ghost in mourning. I knew the lame blacksmith in the village was the man who had killed her family. The system was waiting for someone to deliver the second to the first. Celine moved inside the bond. Her voice was a quiet line behind my sternum. He killed children? He did. Then I have no objection. Other newbies were drifting around the quest board, taking ordinary tier quests, complaining loudly about the difficult tier in case the village was listening. I took the gourd the chief offered me, D-class ghost trapping gourd, the entry-level capture item, and the standard ghost hunting kit, and I walked west again. The walk west, this time, was a known quantity. The red dress girl was waiting for me in the courtyard, the way all the forum threads had said she would be. Head down, hair across her face, the dress soaked dark at the hem. The silver eye took her in and gave me the missing details. Her family had died in the courtyard cellar. The lame blacksmith had been the one with the knife. Her grief had calcified into a B-grade ghost classification, and the system had been waiting 8 game years for a player to do for her what no one had been willing to do. I let her see the silver eye. She looked up. The hair fell back. Her face was the face of someone who had been promised a thing she no longer believed she would get. I told her, in 2 short sentences, what I had come to do. I asked her to walk me to the man who had killed her father. She did not speak. She nodded. We walked back into the village together. The other players gave us a wide berth. The system flagged her ghost class on their interfaces, and several of them logged off rather than risk being in her path. The lame blacksmith was at his anvil. He saw the girl walking behind me, and the hammer fell out of his hand. He started a speech about how he had been wrongly accused, paraphrased through what I could read in his eyes before he opened his mouth. He never finished it. The red dress girl took 1 step past me, and the courtyard's 8 years of patience went into one motion. The system pinged a quest completion. The blacksmith was no longer there. The red dress girl was no longer there either. She had folded herself into the D-class gourd I held in my hand, and the gourd had a name now, and the name was hers, and the name was on my contract roster as my second ghost. The system rewarded me for the difficult tier with an A-grade ghost embryo, a small pearl white sphere the size of a grape, faintly warm in my palm. I closed my hand around it. I knew exactly what I was going to do with it. I left the village before the rest of the players had finished arguing about which ordinary tier quests to take. I logged out for the meeting with Marcus. The real world was the real world. Marcus had agreed to buy my sword demon for 10,000 yuan in cash, in person, at a parking garage 2 levels under the city's worst shopping plaza at 10 in the evening. Marcus had agreed to a price he had no intention of paying. I had agreed to a meeting I had no intention of leaving on his terms. I drove the rented car down the ramp. The fluorescent strip lights buzzed. 3 henchmen waited near a black sedan with the trunk popped. Marcus stood at the front of the sedan with his hands in his coat pockets and the kind of grin a man wears when he has counted on someone being smaller than they are. Marcus was heavyset, mid-30s, a face that had been broken once and reset poorly. He waved me forward with 2 fingers. I parked. I got out. I walked to the front of his car. I let one of his henchmen close the distance behind me, far enough that I could feel him without having to turn my head. Marcus said his line. The line was about the price changing because the market for in-game items was volatile. The line had a knife in it about halfway through. The henchman behind me was reaching into the inside of his coat. The other 2 were already pulling on the henchman behind Marcus's left shoulder. I closed the silver eye and opened the layer beneath it for the 2nd time in this lifetime. Marcus saw himself bleeding out on the concrete from a chest wound that had not happened yet. The image lasted half a second. I gave him the 2nd image, a different chest wound, in a different alley, in a different direction. I gave him the 3rd image, the one where his henchman left him there and walked out laughing because he had not paid them this month. The 3rd image lasted a second and a half, which is enough time for a man to remember every payment he has not made. By the time Marcus's bearings came back, my knife was in his shoulder and his bank app was open and he was breathing fast through his teeth. The henchman had not moved. I had told the silver eye to keep them not moving for the next 90 seconds. The bank app accepted the transfer, 2 million yuan, paid in 3 rounds because the daily limit on a small-time gangster's account is what it is. I closed his app. I closed mine. I stepped back. I walked to my car. He started screaming when I was in the elevator. He screamed about how he was going to find me. He stopped screaming when his henchman exchanged a look that confirmed everything the silver eye had shown him about how this evening would end if I had not been generous. I drove home with 2 million yuan in real-world cash and the sword demon still in my game inventory. I logged back into the game and used the 2 million to buy ghost crystals from the player who would later call himself Jordan. He ran a 4-man gold farming team out of a basement 2 prefectures away. He responded to my forum post in 3 minutes flat. He delivered 255 level 2 crystals and 10 level 3 crystals to the inn's back room before midnight. He took the cash, asked no questions, gave me his runner line for repeat business, and shook my hand. "You buy more, I deliver more," he said. "Whatever you need, you'll hear from me," I said. I absorbed the crystals. The sword demon, fed the A-grade ghost embryo, ascended from B to S in private behind a tree at the village's south edge. My player level rolled to 5. The sword demon's level rolled to 5. The system pinged me a single line. "Your level threshold has triggered the world ranking system." The world chat opened on my interface, alongside 3 new leaderboard panels. 3 minutes after the rankings opened, my alias topped all 3. Player level, 6 paths. Ghost quality, 6 paths empress Yonline ghost, recorded as a triple S+ that the leaderboard had to render in a special font. Contracted ghost rank, 6 paths. The world chat went silent for 2 seconds. Then it caught fire. Players from 3 countries argued about whether I was a glitch. A guild called Hellgate Palace posted a recruitment offer in 5 different translations. Someone posted a screenshot of the leaderboard with my name circled in red. 3 large guilds put bounties on the head of any player who could identify 6 paths. I closed the chat panel. Celine's voice arrived in the bond, quietly amused. "They are angry. They will get angrier." "Good," she said. "I have not enjoyed an evening in a long time." I logged out at 1 in the morning. The 2 million yuan was in my account. The sword demon was at S rank and unawakened. Celine was at triple S+ and bonded. The world thought I was a glitch named 6 paths. The reincarnation eye was warm in its socket. I had not slept in 20 hours, and I would not sleep tonight either. I opened the kitchen window. The city was the city. Somewhere across the river, Vivian was sleeping in someone else's apartment. Somewhere across town, Marcus was washing the blood off his shoulder and counting his remaining accounts. Somewhere on a server I owned the top of, a guild called Hellgate Palace was preparing a recruitment trip toward a player they had not yet figured out how to find. I made instant noodles. I ate them at the desk. The silver eye watched the steam rise. I had 2 years. I had used the first 18 hours well. I had a queen, a sword, an embryo, a gold farming pipeline, 2 million yuan, and an alias every guild in the country was now obsessed with. I had earned the rest of the night to eat my noodles in peace. I was 3 days into the second life when I went looking for a teammate. The teammate I was looking for was not the kind of player a smart man wants in his party. He was loud, he panicked under pressure, and his ghost was a long-haired, vengeful one with mediocre stats and excellent control. In the previous life, I had watched him get killed in his second week by a player who took advantage of his panic. In this life, I had decided to use the panic before it killed him. He was a useful man with a short shelf life. I found him at the recruitment grove, posting in trade chat about how he wanted to do a difficult tier hidden quest before the big guilds took them all. I joined his party. I told him I had a quest target, Shaded Village, 2 hours walk west of the Empress's castle, and that the loot was a B-grade ghost sword and a ghost treasure of unknown classification. He agreed before I had finished the sentence. His name on the leaderboard was a string of self-descriptive characters that translated to a joke about being skinny when he was not. I called him by his runner line. He did not mind. He was happy to be invited. We left the village together. Celine's voice arrived inside the bond as we crossed the ridge. "He will not survive the year. He will survive this quest. After that, he is on his own. You are surprisingly merciful. I am merciful where it costs me nothing." She approved of the answer. I felt the approval like a hand on my shoulder that was not there. Shaded Village was the kind of empty that had eaten its own population. The huts were collapsed at the load-bearing posts. The wells in the central square were filled to the brim with black water that did not move when the wind changed. Bodies, not freshly dead, but dried, lay in the doorways, the way bodies lie when whoever is supposed to come bury them has been dead longer. The teammate behind me made a small sound and stopped walking. The first ghoul servant came out of the second hut on the left. The sword demon I had been carrying since the red dress courtyard met it in 3 exchanges and ended it. The teammate's long-haired, vengeful ghost provided crowd control on the second and third. The fourth and fifth came in a rush from the well side, and we cut them down between us. By the time we crossed the square, my sword demon had absorbed enough crystals to roll up to level 6, and the teammate was visibly rattled. The pen at the back of the square held a level 6 elite, the boss the system used as a checkpoint for the village's main encounter. We took the elite the way the forum thread had said to take it, with the teammate's ghost holding it from behind while the sword demon broke its hindquarters. It dropped. We collected the crystals. We stood at the lip of the blood-stained well at the village's center. The thing in the well had been waiting for us. The ghoul boss came out of the well faster than the forum thread had warned. He was twice the height the forum had said, and his arms were longer, and the system's danger flag turned red the moment his head cleared the lip of the well. The teammate behind me started screaming. The sword demon's first strike landed clean on the boss's shoulder, and the boss berserked. Berserk is the system's word for a boss that has decided not to follow its own rules. The boss caught the sword demon's second strike with one hand, shattered the blade, and turned its head toward the teammate. I had budgeted 90 seconds for this fight. It had taken 30. I summoned Celine from the bond. She stepped out of my collarbone and walked across the square, barefoot. The ghoul boss roared at her. She did not roar back. She raised one hand. The boss was a level 8 monster the system had reserved for the village's first clear celebration, and he was severely injured before her hand had finished moving. The teammate stopped screaming because his nervous system had not yet decided what register to scream in for the new threat. The boss buckled at the knees. Black blood streamed from his ears. She did not hit him a second time. The sword demon came in from the side and finished what she had started. The boss dropped. The system pinged a quest completion. The teammate was on his back staring at the sky. He had been there for 4 seconds when his brain rebooted. I gave Celine a small nod. She returned to the bond. The square was quiet except for the teammates breathing. The system rewarded the duo with a B-grade Ghost Slayer sword for the standard tier and a Ghost Pregnancy Crystal for the hidden tier. The Ghost Pregnancy Crystal was a small pearl white sphere streaked with red, different from the Ghost Embryo, denser, faintly humming. I closed my hand around it and felt Celine's interest move through the bond. That is what I think it is. It is. And you intend to use it tonight. I do. The teammate sat up. He looked at me. He did not ask the questions a smart man would have asked. He took his half of the standard loot and his half of the credit and walked back toward the village without me. The throne room had not changed. The throne was empty because Celine was on my collarbone. The dais was warm. I climbed the steps. I sat on the throne, not because I was claiming it, but because she had invited me through the bond, and the bond's voice had said, sit. I took the Ghost Pregnancy Crystal out of my inventory, and I held it in my open palm, and I gave it to her through the bond. Celine materialized in front of me, the way she had at the courtyard against the boss, but slower. Her eyes were the color of winter glass, and they were warm. This will accelerate the cycle, she said. It will not be quick the way mortal birth is quick, but it will be quick the way ghost birth is quick. Are you ready? I am. Then watch. The crystal dissolved between her hands. The system pinged a phenomenon. Ghost air imminent. The throne room's ceiling cracked open in patterns of silver fire that did not burn the stone. The shaft of moonlight from the high window doubled. Celine's hands were full of light. The light gathered. The light shaped itself. The light became a small boy. He was 4 feet tall. He had Celine's hair and the silver of my left eye in both of his. He was wreathed in a quiet blue lightning that the system flagged as SS Aptitude Thunder Demon Lord. He looked at the throne room. He looked at his mother. He looked at me. He bowed. Father, he said. The throne room was warm in a way it had not been in 1,000 years. I came down off the throne. I knelt at his level. The boy who was now my first heir met my eyes and did not blink. What is your name, father? Adrian. Then I will give you a name in return, he said. He thought about it. He frowned. He looked at his mother. She nodded. He looked back at me. Damon, he said. That is your name? That is what I would like my name to be. Then that is your name, he smiled. The smile was the smile of a child who had been told he had picked the right answer on a test he had not expected to take. The lightning around his shoulders curled in toward him in a small, affectionate motion. Celine set her hand on his head. The throne room went quiet in a way that was not silent, the way a room goes quiet around a thing that is being recognized. I took the B-grade Ghost Slayer's sword out of my inventory, and I gave it to Damon as his first weapon. He held the hilt with both hands. He tested the weight. He nodded. The sword was the right sword. The system pinged a contract. The boy had accepted the weapon, and his loyalty rolled to maximum without my having to do anything. Celine returned to the collarbone. Damon followed her, the way a small thing follows a larger one, and resolved into a second silver thread that wound itself into the bond beside hers. The bond was now a braid of 2 strands instead of 1. The throne room dimmed. I sat on the steps of the dais, and I closed my eyes for a count of 10. When I opened them, My world had rearranged itself. I had a son. I logged into the village square at midnight. The world rankings had updated while I had been in the throne room. The system had taken its standard 10-minute interval to register Damon's contract and Celine's level shift, and now the interval was up. The leaderboards re-ranked. Player 6 paths held the top spot on 3 boards. The first board was player level. The second board was ghost quality, now reading the SS Thunder Demon Lord against the SSS plus Empress, twin top entries by the same handle. The third board was contracted ghost rank, where the same 2 entries claimed first and second place. The world chat caught fire for the second time in 3 days. 3 large guilds put bounties on the head of any player who could identify 6 paths. The Hellgate Palace recruitment thread reposted in 8 languages. A player from a country I had never been to wrote a 6-paragraph theory that 6 paths was a developer using a test account, then deleted the theory after a moderator told him to stop conspiracy posting. A player from another country posted a screenshot of the leaderboard and asked, in 3 words, who was the woman in the second place ghost slot. I closed the panel. I did not engage. I had not engaged before. I would not engage tonight. I bought another batch of crystals from Jordan. He delivered in 11 minutes. I absorbed them. I leveled to 7. Damon leveled to 7. Celine was 1 level behind me and rising on the bond's shared experience. The bond felt like a braided cord under my collarbone. 3 strands now, 1 for each of us, all of them warm. The village chief did not come out to give me another quest. He had figured out what kind of player I was sometime around the 3rd leaderboard refresh. The other newbies in the square parted for me when I walked past them. 3 of them tried to whisper at the trade board. None of them tried to talk to me. I logged out at one. I lay on my futon with the helmet at my desk and the silver eye in the dark window. Celine's voice arrived at the back of my skull as I drifted off. You have a son. I do. You did not tell him you were not afraid of him either. He is not afraid of me. That seemed to be enough. It was. She said nothing else. I closed both eyes. The right one slept. The left one watched. The bond in my collarbone moved when I breathed. I had a queen. I had a son. I had 3 crowns. I had 2 years. The next move was a guild called Hellgate that had not yet learned my face. Hellgate Palace's recruiter found me in the grove on day 4. He was blonde. He was muscled. He was wearing the kind of starter gear that costs 300 won in real cash to dye in custom colors. He stepped into my path and gave me the speech I had read about on a forum thread written by his next victim. He started with a price for the sword demon, 10,000 yuan, real money, and finished with the threat that came after the price. Hellgate Palace did not take kindly to refusals. Hellgate Palace would find me whether I sold or not. The 200 players milling near the recruitment grove had stopped milling. I let him finish his sentence. Then I closed the silver eye and opened the layer beneath it. The eye showed the recruiter himself a version of his own balance, the precise way the ground would not be where his foot expected it to be. He took 1 step forward and went over backwards. The forward motion of his step kept going for him at the wrong height, and he tumbled, end over end, across the grove and into the recruitment notice board, scattering paper like leaves. The 200 players watching laughed. The recruiter sat up. He started to rebuild his composure. The eye gave him another tilt, and he went over a second time. By the time he was on his feet, his Hellgate dye job was crusted with grass, and his pride had been filed under a different leaderboard entirely. I walked past him. I did not raise my voice. I did not say a word. The sword demon stayed in my inventory, and the empress stayed on my collarbone, and the laughter stayed behind me as I walked east. Celine's voice through the bond was dry and mildly entertained. Was that the second item on your calendar? That was the third. The crow was second. Then we should hurry. The crow is impatient. Olivia was on the ledge fighting a 1-horned wild ghost when I arrived. She was a friendly type. She had an A-grade ice elemental Snow White ghost, and she did not know what to do with it. The wild ghost broke through her ghost's defense and was about to take her head off when I stepped out of the tree line and sent the sword demon. 3 exchanges. The wild ghost dropped. Olivia turned, mid-prayer, and saw the silver eye in my left socket and the way the sword demon had moved. You saved me, she said. I happened to be passing. Will you team with me? There is a hidden boss at the top of the cliff. It is too strong for me alone. I told her I would. I knew the boss. I knew her. I knew 3 months from now in another life, she would steal a piece of my loot and lose her ghost as the cost. I filed the future and I followed her up the cliff. The Thunderbird-bodied demon was at the cliff's high ledge, sleeping in a nest of dried lightning. The system flagged him at elite rank. He woke up when the silver eye read him. He was airborne in 3 seconds, screaming a lightning-class attack at us. I summoned Damon for the first time in front of another player. The boy stepped out of my collarbone and into the air without a wing or a thought, and the Thunderbird's lightning broke around him and fed him instead of hurting him. Damon's judgment spear formed in his right hand. He set the spear's tip against the Thunderbird's chest. He drove it home. The Thunderbird hit the cliff face and slid down dead. The system pinged the world. First player to kill an elite boss. 6 paths. Special rewards. Adrian, who is hidden behind the alias, opted out of having the public name appear. Olivia sat on a stone with both hands on her knees and stared at the cliff. The loot dropped. I took it. I did not split it. The kill was Damon's. The loot was Damon's. Olivia did not protest. She had not contributed anything that earned her a share, and she knew it. She thanked me for the assist and the team up. I nodded. I left her on the cliff with the Snow White ghost and the wild ghost's crystal in her pocket. 3 months and 20-some days from now, she would steal something of mine. The clock was running. The S-rank soul-eating crow was the second item on my calendar and the most ridiculous-looking thing in the entire game. I found him at the half-fallen stone tower in the wasteland, drifting. He was the size of a small dog. He was black. He was not actually a crow. He was a duck wearing the system's idea of a crow's feathers. He waddled when he walked. He tripped over his own feet on the way to greet me. He looked up at me with an expression that the system rendered in detail and that I would have to learn to read across the next 3 years. His soul class attack was the second strongest area of effect ability in the entire starter region. The system had placed him in the wasteland because no player had figured out how to contract him. I had figured out how to contract him in another life by accident. I planned to do it on purpose this time. He attacked me first. The soul cry hit my sword demon and Damon at the same time, and both of them dropped to one knee. The cry kept going. It tried to find me. The silver eye in my left socket caught the cry and ate it. The crow stopped quacking. He stared. He had never had his attack fail before. I closed the silver eye and opened the layer beneath it and showed the crow a cage made of his own soul. The cage was a metaphor the system understood. The crow understood it too. The system pinged. Master and servant contract offered. The crow accepted before I had finished the prompt. He waddled to me. He tripped on a flat rock. He stood up. He looked indignant. He climbed onto my shoulder by stepping on Damon's outstretched arm and complaining the whole way. He was the most ridiculous creature I would ever own, and he could end an army in one cry. He was perfect. Celine's voice through the bond carried a note I had not heard from her before. It was the note of a queen finding the household pet acceptable. He is silly. He is. I approve, the crow quacked. The wasteland was empty otherwise. I leveled to 7 on the cry residue alone. Damon leveled to 7 beside me, still drinking the last of the lightning. The sword demon, somewhere inside the inventory, pulsed in approval. I had the crow. The 4th heir of my future household had moved in. I logged out at midnight and ate a bowl of noodles and read the Hellgate Palace recruitment thread on the official forum. The thread was 43 pages long and growing by 10 posts a minute. Hellgate Palace had been the dominant guild on the server for 2 whole days, and a single anonymous player had now embarrassed their lead recruiter in front of 200 witnesses. Half the thread was demanding a manhunt. The other half was demanding a peace offer at any price. The guild's ranking system was a public mess. Their boss, Dominic, the player who would later make me kill him in a bamboo grove, had not yet posted in the thread, but he had been online during the leaderboard refresh that named me the first elite boss killer on the server. I was not on a forum he could find me on. I had hidden my real name behind the alias and the alias behind the silver eye. The hunt was going to take Hellgate weeks, and they were going to spend the weeks burning resources on the wrong leads. By the time they found me, I would be ready to put their guild in the dirt. I closed the laptop. I went to bed. The silver eye in the dark window watched the ceiling for the rest of the night. I had 4 days. I had a queen, a son, a sword demon, an S-rank crow, and an alias with 3 crowns. I had not started. The antique shop was the kind of shop a man uses as a front for a trade he does not want on his tax return. Wallace was a tomb raider. He had been a tomb raider since he was 16. He kept his stockpile in the basement of his shop because the shop's storefront looked like a hobby. He had not been told that the boy walking down the basement stairs at 10 in the evening was the boy who would later own the country. I had read about him in a forum thread written by another player who had tried to buy from Wallace and ended up shot. The shooting had not been recorded by the police because Wallace's basement had a different kind of accountability than the law. I had read the thread carefully. I had taken the elevator down with the shape of his accountability fully in mind. He saw me. He stood up from the desk where he was cataloging a piece of burial jade. 2 of his men flanked him on either side of the shelves. One of them moved his coat enough that the holster underneath did not have to be explained. He told me, in the kind of voice a man uses when he wants you to know what kind of voice he can use, that the merchandise was not for casual customers. He named a price for everything in the basement that was 3 times the real-world value. value. He waited for me to negotiate. He did not lower the price when I did not. I asked instead if he had heard of a thing called a black ghost mist. He said he had not. I told him he would in 18 months. I told him the burial jade in his basement would be worth 1,000 times more than he was selling it for if he kept it for those 18 months instead of moving it. I told him that the man who could explain why the jade would be worth that much was standing in his basement and could be persuaded, with the right arrangement, to be the man who came back for it later. His men laughed. He laughed. He pulled the gun out from under his coat. I closed the silver eye. I opened the layer beneath it for the third time in this lifetime. The eye showed Wallace 3 of his own deaths in 3 seconds. The first was the police kicking in the front door of his shop in 18 months and finding him with merchandise that the New World flagged as Ghost Realm contraband. The second was a partner of his, a man whose name I knew but did not say, putting a bullet in the back of his head in 26 months over an inheritance dispute. The third was a ghost the size of a building eating him in the back alley behind the shop 9 months from this evening. The third image lasted long enough for him to recognize the alley. By the time his bearings came back, the gun was on the floor, and his henchmen were standing very still, and Wallace was on his knees with his hands on his head, and his breathing had gone wet. I told him the new arrangement. He would keep buying every piece of burial jade and ghost-related antique in the city he could find, and he would keep them all in the basement, and he would not move them. He would not need to pay for them out of his own pocket because I would wire the cash. He would tell his contacts that he was building a private collection. He would not tell anyone what was actually in it. In 18 months, when the thing he had not heard of arrived, I would come collect what he had built. He would live through the arrival because he had built it. If he ran, the eye would find him. If he sold any of it, the eye would know. He nodded. He could not make words. The nodding was enough. I left the basement. I left one of his men breathing the kind of breathing that was not going to ever fully recover. I went home. Wallace would be a runner for the next 18 months. The runner would not need supervision. The eye had bought him for the cost of 3 seconds. The General's Tomb's entrance was a feng shui clue I had memorized in another life. The system had hidden the dungeon under a hill that looked like every other hill on the eastern map. 300 players had walked past the hill in the past day. None of them had read the clue. I read it. The hill split. The passage opened. I went down. The first basement was zombie soldiers. Damon's lightning shredded them in arc volleys. The crow ate the souls and quacked indignantly when one of them tried to escape, and the sword demon did the cleanup. We collected ghost crystals from the corpses. We descended. The second basement was zombie cavalry, 10 elite mounted units the system had reserved for an organized guild raid. The crow opened his beak. The crow let out a small cry, not the full apocalyptic register, just a localized one, just enough to shave the riders off their mounts. All 10 dropped. The crow leveled to 9. He waddled across the chamber to collect the souls. He tripped on the lip of a gravestone. He looked up at me. He looked indignant. I picked him up and carried him to the next stairs. The third basement was the lazy zombie general, an elite boss that was, the system informed me in fine print, asleep. He had been asleep for 400 years. The forum threads had said he was nightmarish to wake up. I tapped his coffin lid. He yawned. I told the family, through the bond, in the brief tactical register I had developed, to hit him on 3. The sword demon would land a strike on his helmet. The crow would stun his soul. Damon would deliver the killing blow with the judgment spear. The lazy zombie general was still yawning when the spear pierced his eye. He died yawning. The system pinged a server-wide announcement. First player to clear a hidden dungeon. 6 paths. Special rewards. The world chat detonated for the 3rd time. I closed the panel. The reward chamber was small. The altar in the center had 4 objects on it. The first was a demon greatsword, a B-rank weapon Damon could grow into. The second was a demon armor, light, ghost energy flexible, the kind of armor a player wears when he wants to be punched and laughed about it. The third was an S-rank ink ghost sword, black-bladed, slim, the kind of sword that becomes a name in someone's lifetime. The fourth was the thing I had come for, the innate sword embryo. I took it out of the altar's center socket and I held it in my open palm. It was the size of a chestnut. It was warm. It pulsed once, slowly, in time with something I could feel through the bond. Celine's interest. The sword demon, somewhere in my inventory, pulsed back. I closed my hand around the embryo. I logged out before the dungeon could close behind me, because I did not want to be in the dungeon when the world chat fully metabolized the 3rd server announcement in 4 days. I went home. I ate noodles. I set the embryo on the desk beside the helmet. I looked at it for a long time. Tomorrow morning, before sunrise, before any other player was awake, I would feed the embryo to the sword demon in a grove no one knew I went to. The sword demon would become Elena. I had been keeping the appointment with her for 3 days. I closed both eyes. The right one slept. The left one watched the embryo. The embryo watched back. I logged in before sunrise. The grove was the same grove I had used to humiliate the Hellgate recruiter, except at this hour it was empty, and the light through the leaves was the kind of light that makes a man slow down without knowing why. I walked to the clearing at the center. I unsheathed the sword demon for the first time outside of combat. I set the blade on the moss between 2 stones. I took the innate sword embryo out of my inventory. The sword demon and the embryo recognized each other before I had finished breathing. I knelt. I placed the embryo into the slot at the crossguard where the sword demon's core sat exposed. The embryo dissolved. The blade dissolved. Light filled the grove. I did not look away. The light gathered. It pulled itself in from the edges of the clearing. It compressed. It found a shape. It became a woman. She rose out of the silver. Long jet black hair past her waist. White silk robes that fell the way water falls. A sword at her left hip. Slim, black-bladed. Its name not yet given in this lifetime. She stood barefoot on the moss, and she opened her eyes, and her eyes were the color the system had reserved for SS rank ghosts who had remembered what it was to be a person before they had been a weapon. She did not look surprised to see me. You called for me. I did. She tested the weight of her own form. She raised one hand. She let the silver in her hair settle. She walked 3 steps across the moss to where I was kneeling, and she stopped at a polite distance. What do I call you? Adrian, I said. What do I call you? She thought about it. She had not had a name in a long time. The sword demon's contract had given her a function. It had not given her a person. Elena, she said. Elena, the system pinged. Sword demon evolved into ghost sword immortal. SS aptitude. The system asked in 3 small print sentences whether the contractor wished to upgrade the master and servant contract to a master and equal contract, a soulmate tier bond, similar to the one I held with Celine. I accepted before the system had finished the prompt. The bond settled along my right collarbone, a second silver thread, parallel to the one Celine wore on the left. The braid in my collarbone was now 4 strands: Celine, Elena, Damon, and the bond itself. Elena gave me a single short look and then dissolved into the thread. You may call on me anytime. I will. She was gone, except inside the bond, except as a quiet presence on my right side that had not been there an hour ago. I sat in the grove for an hour. The system handed me a level up to 10 in recognition of the SS rank evolution. The level up triggered a hidden quest, the Hidden Demon King, and I read the prompt and closed it without acting. The hidden quest could wait 2 days. The Hellgate Palace's Cyclops fight was tomorrow afternoon. I had decided which event came first. Celine's voice arrived through the bond. She was approving. She is good. She is? Do you trust her? I trust the bond. The bond chose her. That is the right answer. Elena's voice arrived next, gentler than Celine's, sparer. She had not spoken much in the previous life either. The bond's inner speech register suited her. What do we do first, Adrian? I thought about it. We let Hellgate fight their boss tomorrow. We watch them win it, and then we steal their kill. The grove was quiet. The 2 queens at my collarbones did not say no. I logged out at sunrise. I went to the noodle shop on the corner of my block. I ordered a bowl. I ate slowly. I read the Hellgate Palace forum thread on my phone while I ate. They were planning the Cyclops fight for tomorrow at noon. They had assembled the full guild, 200 ghosts, Dominic himself, every recruiter and second-tier officer they had. They were posting strategy notes for thread members to coordinate against the boss's region attack. I added their plan to the calendar in my head. I finished the noodles. I paid. I went home. I slept for the first time in 3 days. When I woke, it was the morning of the day I had been waiting for. I had Celine at my left collarbone, Elena at my right, Damon and the crow in the bond between them, and an SS rank sword immortal holding a sword whose name no one alive remembered. Hellgate Palace was about to find out what kind of player they had been hunting for the last week. I arrived at the cliff at noon. Hellgate Palace had been fighting the Cyclops for 4 hours. They had used 3 ghost-suppressing talismans to pin its left leg to the basin floor. They had put their entire combat roster into the fight. Every officer, every recruiter, every backline healer, 200 ghosts arrayed in concentric rings. Dominic himself stood at the front line with the bull demon I had read about in another life on his shoulder. They had the Cyclops at last bar HP. The kill was 20 seconds away. I stepped to the edge of the cliff. The light caught me. Half the basin looked up. Dominic saw me first. He had not seen my face before. He had seen the leaderboard. He had seen the manhunt thread. He had seen the rumors. He had not seen the man. He saw me now. The silver eye, the bond marks visible through my collar, the alias under my name. He raised one hand to signal his guild not to move. He thought he had time to negotiate. He did not. I drew Elena. She stepped out of my right collarbone in the same fluid motion the sword demon had used to step out of a sheath, except now the motion ended in the form of a woman with a sword whose blade was long enough to cross the basin. The sword-controlling immortal technique was the system's name for what she did next. It was a thin silver line of pure ghost energy that crossed the entire basin in less than a second and severed the Cyclops' last health point in a clean horizontal cut. The Cyclops dropped. The system pinged a server-wide announcement. Boss kill, 6 paths. Dominic's sword stopped in midair a full second before its descent would have completed. He turned. He stared. His bull demon at his shoulder rotated with him. Every guild ghost on the basin rotated with him. The cliff went silent. He told me, in the voice a man uses when he has just lost the largest in-game prize of his year and is trying not to scream, that he was prepared to be reasonable. He named a price, 500,000 yuan in real cash. Vice President of Hellgate Palace. Tribute from his guild for the rest of the season. He paraphrased it as an offer of friendship. I paraphrased his offer through my narration the way I had paraphrased Vivian's voicemail, which is to say I did not let his words enter the prose. I told him no. I did not raise my voice. I did not draw a second weapon. I did not summon another member of my family. I held his gaze across the basin and I shook my head once, and the shake was the only answer he was going to get. He raised his hand to signal the attack. I looked at the crow on my shoulder. The crow looked at me. I nodded. The crow opened his beak. The crow let out one cry. It was not a roar. It was not a screech. It was a sound the system rendered as Soul Class wide area attack. And the system rendered it the way the system renders things that should not exist, in 3 lines of small print at the bottom of the interface, explaining that 207 Ghost Class entities had been removed from the field by a single audio tier output. The cliff was quiet. 200 Hellgate ghosts dropped where they stood, not staggered, not progressive, all at once. The bull demon at Dominic's shoulder collapsed where it stood as if a string at its center had been cut. The basin's ghost energy field bottomed out. The world chat panel on my interface, which had been climbing past 500 lines a minute, stopped scrolling for a count of 3 seconds because none of the players watching had managed to type yet. Dominic stood alone in the middle of the basin. The Hellgate Guild's mortal players, the human bodies behind the ghosts, were still alive. They had not been the target. They were standing where they had been standing, except the things at their shoulders had vanished. The cliff held. The wind moved. Somewhere, a single bird that did not belong to anyone called once and stopped. I looked at Elena. Elena turned her blade toward the only remaining Hellgate asset on the basin, the bull demon's resurrection stone backup, which Dominic had been carrying as insurance. She crossed the basin in one step. The blade came down. The stone broke into a sound that was the opposite of the crow's cry. Small, sharp, brief. The bull demon did not come back. Dominic stared at where the stone had been. The cliff stayed quiet. 200 Hellgate players stood with empty shoulders and watched their leader try to find an answer. I gave Dominic one sentence. You have one chance to walk off this cliff alive. Use it. He used it. He turned. He walked. Hellgate Palace's leader walked off the cliff in front of his entire guild's mortal player roster, and not one of them said a word as he passed. I let him go. I had decided in another life that the personal kill belonged to a different phase. The casual players who had been watching the fight from a safe distance came down to the basin to harvest the Cyclops' loot. They did not approach me. They glanced at the silver eye. They glanced at the crow on my shoulder. They glanced at Elena, who had returned to the bond after killing the resurrection stone, but was visibly riding my right collarbone in a way the system rendered as a faint silver glow against my collar. They harvested the Cyclops parts, said nothing, and left. The world chat had unstuck and was now scrolling at a rate the system flagged as approaching server overload. International players were arguing about whether the crow's cry had been a glitch. Domestic players were arguing about whether Hellgate Palace was finished. 3 smaller guilds were posting praise threads. One guild was posting a humor thread comparing the crow's beak to a cannon. 6 paths trended on every regional forum the system tracked. I closed the panel. Celine's voice through the bond was quiet and certain. Tomorrow, you finish him. I do. Then tonight, you sleep. I logged out at the cliff. I went home. I made instant noodles. I ate them at the desk with the helmet's standby light glowing pale blue. I read 3 pages of the Hellgate Palace forum thread, which had become an autopsy. The guild was already splintering into factions. By morning, 3 of Dominic's lieutenants would have left to start their own guilds. The Hellgate Palace name would still exist by the end of the week, but it would be a corpse with the lights left on. The personal kill was tomorrow at the Bamboo Grove. I closed the laptop. I went to bed. The silver eye watched the ceiling. The bond was warm across both collarbones. The crow slept on the pillow beside me with both feet in the air. I had 2 years. I had spent today well. I walked into the grove at dawn, the morning after the cliff. Dominic was waiting for me at the center, the way I had known he would. His armor was on, his snake demon, the only ghost he had been able to recruit overnight after the crow had erased his guild, was coiled at his side. 6 lieutenants flanked him in a half circle. They had spent the night thinking about what they were going to do here. They had not arrived at a good answer. The grove was quiet in the way a grove is quiet when something else is also watching. The silver eye in my left socket caught the second presence before I had taken my third step. The new layer of vision, the layer that had opened when I had absorbed Dominic's demon eye in another timeline and would open here today instead, read the Watcher as a single masked figure standing in the bamboo at the grove's far edge, 20 meters from where Dominic had pitched his last stand. The Watcher was not Hellgate. The Watcher was something else. I noted the Watcher. I did not engage. Dominic raised one hand. He started a speech. I did not let him finish. I closed the silver eye. I opened the layer beneath it. The eye reached into the snake demon at his side and turned the demon's loyalty around for 3 seconds, long enough for the demon to coil toward Dominic instead of away from him. Dominic stopped mid-sentence and stepped back. The demon was confused. The demon was reading Dominic as the threat for 3 seconds. 3 seconds was enough. Dominic's lieutenants moved. Elena moved faster. She crossed the bamboo grove in a single step. Her sword took the snake demon at the head. The demon dissolved. The lieutenants behind Dominic stopped moving because they had nothing left to fight with. Dominic stood alone with one hand half raised and a speech he had not been able to start. I walked the rest of the way to him. He knelt. He was not a man given to kneeling. He knelt because his nervous system had decided he was kneeling without consulting him. He told me, paraphrased through what I read in his face before he opened his mouth, that he was prepared to surrender his guild treasury, his real-world contacts, a long lifetime of obedience. I let him talk for 30 seconds. Then I stepped past him and looked at the mask organization's observer in the bamboo at the grove's far edge. The observer did not move. I held the gaze across the grove for a long second. The new eye layer read his ghost energy density as a player who had built his concealment to professional standards and who had not expected to be seen. The observer's ghost energy did not register surprise. It registered consideration. The observer was deciding whether to continue watching, withdraw, or engage. He decided to continue watching. I decided to let him. I turned back to Dominic. In another life, I said, you killed me. He did not understand the sentence. The sentence was not for him. The sentence was for me, and for the silver eye, and for the bond at my collarbones, and for the alley behind the noodle shop in 2024. He did not need to understand it. He needed to be standing in the place I needed him to be standing in for the next 8 seconds. I drew the thunder ghost spear that Damon had let me borrow this morning. I delivered the kill. The system pinged. Player Dominic killed. Items dropped. B-grade weapons, A-grade armor, S-rank demon eye pendant. I crouched. I picked the pendant up. I held it in my open palm. The reincarnation eye in my left socket reached out for it before I had decided to let it. The pendant dissolved. I felt a thread of cold travel across my optic nerve. A second pupil opened behind the silver one. The new eye layer that had let me see the masked observer in the bamboo settled into permanence. The system flagged it as a tier upgrade. I closed both eyes for a count of 3. I opened them. I could see the bamboo grove twice now, once with the silver pupil, once with the new pupil, and the 2 views layered. The masked observer's ghost energy density was rendered in higher detail than it had been a moment ago. He was, the new pupil told me, the second in command of an organization the system was not yet prepared to name. The masked observer turned and walked into the bamboo. He did not run. He walked. He left a single quiet mark on the new pupil's depth of field as he went, the way a man leaves a forwarding address on the door of an apartment he has left. I would learn his name later. The new pupil filed the address. I logged out at sunset. I made noodles. I ate them at the desk. The bond on both collarbones was warm. The new pupil behind the silver one in my left socket was warm. The world chat had spent the entire day arguing about whether Six Paths was a developer or a god or a glitch, and 3 of the largest guilds had retracted their bounty threads and replaced them with formal apologies. The Hellgate Palace forum thread had hit 400 pages. 2 of Dominic's lieutenants had already left to start their own guilds. The 3rd lieutenant had logged out at noon and not returned. The personal ledger from the alley was closed. It did not feel the way I had expected it to feel. I had imagined the closure as a fire. It was not a fire. It was a quiet door closing in a hallway I would not walk through again. I had imagined the closure as relief. It was not relief. It was the smaller thing that comes after relief. The thing that is just absence. An old weight that had been on my shoulder for a year and a half, being suddenly not there. I sat at the desk with the empty bowl, and I let the absence settle. Celine's voice arrived in the bond, not declarative, quieter than usual. You are well. I am. That is the closure you wanted. It was. And now we get ready for Arc 2. The bond was quiet for a moment. Then Elena's voice arrived from the right. There are men in masks. I know. They will come. They will. We will be ready. I closed the laptop. I went to bed. The crow climbed onto the pillow with both feet in the air and started snoring. Damon, somewhere inside the bond, made a small contented sound. I had a queen. I had a sword immortal. I had a son. I had a crow. I had a ridiculous family, and I had killed the man who had killed me in another life, and I had 2 years before the apocalypse arrived for everyone else. The silver eye in the dark window watched the ceiling. The new pupil behind it watched the silver eye. Arc 1 was over. I took the afternoon between Arc 1 and what came next. Elena materialized into the grove beside me without my asking. She did not say anything for a count of 10. She watched the stream. She watched the leaves. She set her hand on the moss next to mine and did not lift it. The bond on my right collarbone went a degree warmer. Are you well? She said. I am. You closed the door clean. I did. She nodded. The grove stayed quiet. The crow waddled out of the trees with a small frog in his beak and a confused expression, and Damon followed him out, telling him in 3 different ways that he could not eat the frog. Elena watched the boy and the duck, and a small line of warmth moved across her face that I had not seen before. I let the afternoon last as long as it could. Then I read the parchment in my inventory. The will-o'-the-wisp dropped from one of the Hellgate looters yesterday, and the parchment glowed and the glow pointed north toward the graveyard at the edge of the village's dead orchard. I knew what was at the graveyard. I had known since I had read the parchment. I stood up. Elena stood up. Cyrus, she said. Cyrus. The grove went cold by a degree as we left it. The graveyard's gate was a stone arch that leaned at the angle of an old man too tired to stand straight. We walked through. 3 corpse demons came out of the rotting graves. Damon's lightning shredded them in an arc volley. The crow ate the souls. The graveyard did not have many bodies left to throw at us by the time we reached the central plaza. Cyrus was waiting behind the largest tombstone. He stepped out the way a man steps out when he has been waiting a long time for the man on the other side of the headstone. Older than I remembered, harder. He carried a lustful demon at his side, a B-rank ghost the system flagged as auxiliary control class. His face was the face of the man who had taken my fiancée in another life after the alley. He started a speech. I drew Elena. 3 exchanges. The lustful demon dissolved. The graveyard was quiet. Cyrus stood at the edge of his own dropped weapon and did not understand that the speech he had prepared had ended before it had started. System ping. Player Cyrus killed. His body shimmered. A resurrection stone activated beneath him. The system flagged the stone in 3 small print sentences. S-rank consumable. Single use. Teleport bound. The stone took him. He vanished with 1 short paraphrased curse hanging in the air between us. I had not predicted the stone. I stood with Elena at the edge of the empty grave for a long second. The new pupil behind the silver eye filed the ghost energy direction the stone had taken him in. The address the stone had teleported to was not in this region. It was in a region I would not reach for at least another 4 months in this lifetime. He had escaped. He would come back angry. The escape was a debt. I filed the debt. Elena moved beside me. He will return. He will. You will be ready. I will. The graveyard sat quiet. The new pupil watched the dust where the stone had taken him. The graveyard's main encounter, the coffin-carrying giant, emerged from the back of the plaza when Cyrus's stone had finished teleporting. It was tall. The black coffin on its shoulders was the kind of black the system uses when a thing is meant to be opened only by someone the system has decided is worthy. The giant raised a club twice the size of its own head. Damon's lightning paralyzed the giant's arms. The crow's localized soul cry softened the giant's resistance. Elena's sword cut the leg out from under it. The giant fell. The coffin slipped sideways off its shoulders and hit the plaza stones with a sound like a temple bell. The crow leveled to 10 on the giant's soul. He waddled triumphantly. He fell over a grave. He stood up. He looked indignant. I crossed the plaza to the coffin. I had reached for the lid when the players arrived. There were 7 of them. They had followed the parchment glow at a distance. They had watched the boss die. They had decided that the loot in the coffin was loot they could take from a player who had clearly already used most of his resources on the kill. They did not know what kind of resources I had not used. Their leader, burly, axe at his hip, in colors that looked like they had been dyed last week to flag him as veteran, sent his ghost in first. Elena's sword took the ghost mid-stride. The leader stopped. The other 6 looked at him. I gave the 7 players one sentence. Walk. The leader laughed. He pulled the axe. The other 6 stepped forward in a half circle. I nodded to the crow. The crow's localized cry took 6 of the 7 ghosts simultaneously. The 7th ghost, belonging to the burly leader, was the only one fast enough to survive the cry. Elena's sword came back across in a horizontal cut and ended it. The 7 players stood at the edge of the plaza with empty shoulders and the leader's axe in his hand, useless. 2 of them panicked. They turned on each other in the misplaced certainty that the other was responsible for the loss. Their bodies dropped to PvP friendly fire damage. The remaining 5 tried to retreat. Damon's lightning took them. The plaza was quiet. I lifted the lid of the black coffin. Inside was a small bronze pagoda the size of a teacup. The system flagged it. 9-story ghost-suppressing tower. S-rank growth potential ghost item. Currently dormant. Will scale with the wielder's ghost energy. I closed my hand around it. Celine's voice through the bond was warm. That will be useful. It will, in particular for what is coming. I know. The graveyard was quiet around me. I tucked the tower into my inventory. I left the plaza on foot. The crow rode my shoulder. Elena had returned to the bond. Damon was somewhere in the central braid, curled up, sleeping off the lightning. The new pupil behind the silver eye watched the dust where Cyrus's stone had teleported him until I was past the gate. I would come back for Cyrus, not in this video, in a later one. I read Vivian's 12 voicemails on the morning of the 7th day. She had moved through the predictable register. The first 3 were apologies that did not contain admissions. The middle 6 were performative breakdowns, laced with sentences I had heard before in another life on a different evening. The final 3 were the real version, begging without dignity, no story behind it. The kind of begging a woman does when she has noticed she has spent every coin in her purse, and the man on the other end has not been picking up. I typed 4 words back. I will not paraphrase them. I sent them. I blocked her number. I felt nothing. I had decided I would feel nothing weeks ago in another life, and the silver eye in the dark window had agreed with me. The closure on Vivian was now a small, clean line on the calendar, and the calendar was busy. I logged into the game. The Ghost Craftsman quest was a buy and run from another player who had pulled it on cooldown. I paid him 5,000 wan in real cash. He handed me the quest paper. I went west to the ice cave the old craftsman had marked. Elena materialized at the cave entrance. The bond on my right collarbone went a degree colder. Ice crystal demons came out of the walls in waves. Elena's sword took them in arc cuts that left clean blue lines through the ice. The crow ate the souls. We collected 50-some crystals. Damon was somewhere in the bond doing the lightning passes from inside, conserving stamina for the boss. Halfway in, I slipped on a slick of black ice, and Elena caught my hand. I had not asked her to catch it. She had moved without thinking. Her face was closer than it had been since the soul bond. The cave's blue glow caught the silver in her braid. I did not pull my hand back. She did not let go. "Are you well?" she said. "Quiet. I am." The Ice Guardian boss roared from the chamber 2 tunnels over, and the moment ended. We straightened. Elena did not say anything else about it. She did not let go of my hand for 3 more steps before the geometry of the tunnel forced her to. The Ice Guardian Ghost was a level 8 elite the system had set up to be a stretch fight for a 5-player party. Selene materialized from my left collarbone uninvited. She had felt the moment in the tunnel through the bond, and she had decided she wanted to meet Elena properly, on the field, in front of the boss. She walked across the frozen lake barefoot. The lake did not crack under her. The Ice Guardian Ghost roared at her. She did not roar back. She and Elena moved on opposite sides of the boss, in a flanking pattern they had not rehearsed. They did not need to rehearse. The Ice Guardian Ghost lasted 4 exchanges. Elena's sword took its right arm. Selene's hand took its head. The boss dropped through the lake's ice and did not come back up. The system pinged the loot. An ice demon bead, S rank, and a ghost tower fragment that pinged my inventory with an upgrade alert. The 9-story tower had absorbed the cave's ambient ghost energy across the fight and was now 8/10 of the way to its SS threshold. Selene turned to Elena. Their eyes met across the cracked surface of the frozen lake. Selene tilted her head. Elena bowed once, formal. Selene gave Elena a single warm sentence. Direct quote, the only sentence she would speak aloud in this phase. "You will keep him safe." "I will." "Then we are sisters." "We are." Selene returned to my left collarbone. Elena returned to my right. The cave was quiet. The crow waddled across the lake's surface to retrieve the ghost crystal from the boss's drop and slipped on the ice and quacked indignantly all the way down to the broken surface where the boss had fallen. I walked out of the cave with the ice demon bead in my palm and a household that had just become formally a family. I logged out at 9. The ice demon bead was in my game inventory. The old craftsman had taken the cave's stone and was forging the S-rank ink ghost sword in the village's smithy. It would be ready in 3 game days. The tower was nearly at SS. The 2 queens had named each other sisters. Celine's voice through the bond was warmer than it had been since the Empress's castle. The household had grown 4 sizes in 2 weeks. I made noodles. I ate them slowly. The crow on the kitchen counter complained about the steam. Damon, who had spent the day in the central braid recovering, made a small content sound. Elena was a quiet warmth on my right side. Celine was a slow, steady warmth on my left. I had 2 queens. I had a son. I had a crow. I had a sword whose name no one alive remembered, an ice demon bead, and a tower 9/10 of the way to SS. The mask organization had not made another move yet. The Drifter Ghost Gang was about to. The Drifter Ghost Gang's leader stepped into our path on the village square the next afternoon. Aiden was 25 and convinced he was 30. His gang stood in a half circle behind him. He named a price for Elena, 100,000 won in real cash. He paraphrased the offer as a transaction between equals. I refused. He summoned a scythe demon. Elena's sword took it in one cut. The Drifter Gang stepped forward in a fan. The casual players watching from the trade boards stopped talking. I gave Aiden one sentence. You will not survive the conversation you are starting. He started the conversation anyway. The crow's localized cry took half the gang's ghosts. Elena's sword took the rest. Aiden died in a half pose with his mouth open. The casual players watching from the trade boards started backing away. 3 of them logged out on the spot. The square's quest board was empty for the rest of the night. The Drifter Ghost Gang would respawn in the village graveyard within the hour, organized into the army of punishment, and their forum thread would call for a manhunt that 10,000 players would eventually answer. I noted the timeline. I let it run. The Rhinoceros Plains were the only place in the eastern map where a player could solo farm large amounts of crystals at this level. I led the family through 3 hours of herd clearing. Damon's lightning shaved the herds down at range. The crow ate souls in waves. Elena was a quiet sweep on the right flank. The Rhinoceros Demon leader, an elite boss, emerged from the grass at hour 4. The silver eye read his weakness in 2 seconds. The weakness was at his rear. I chose to honor the design. Damon stunned the boss from the front. The crow's localized cry softened him. I delivered the kill from behind with the Thunder Ghost Spear. The boss bellowed once, fell sideways, and dropped a B-rank weapon and a stack of ghost crystals. Damon went to retrieve the loot. A shadow moved past him. The loot vanished before Damon's hand had reached it. I had been waiting 3 months for the shadow. I commanded the crow to deliver a localized demon roar, a stun-class soul cry. The shadow black ghost stiffened mid-stride. Olivia stumbled out from behind the boss's body with the loot in her hands, and her own shadow ghost paralyzed at her feet. I let her find her balance. She tried to negotiate, paraphrased through what I read on her face before she opened her mouth. She had not thought I would care about a stack of crystals. The loot was just sitting there. She had thought it was finders keepers. I gave her one sentence. Damon was reaching for it. Her face changed. Elena's sword took the shadow ghost. The crow's beak took her ghost's soul. I delivered the kill myself with the Thunder Ghost Spear. The plains were quiet around us. The crystals returned to my inventory. Damon picked them up where they had originally fallen and looked at me with the expression of a child who had not understood why an adult had been angry on his behalf. Father, it is done. You did not have to. I did, he nodded. The lightning around his shoulders dimmed. Among the Rhinoceros boss's drops was a soul crystal, a system rare item that triggers a ghost evolution. I held it in my palm. The crow's eyes went very wide. I gave it to him. The crow swallowed the soul crystal. He glowed. He stretched. He grew. By the time the glowing ended, he was the same duck, same ridiculous waddle, but with a faint crown of black ghost flame around his head and an undead manipulation ability the system flagged in his stat panel. He fell over. He stood up. He looked indignant. The crown of ghost flame did not move when he tripped. The soul-devouring death crow demon was now my pet. He was still ridiculous. He could now also raise the dead. The ice demon bead from the ice cave fed Celine the second incubation in the same throne room where the first had happened. The light gathered. The light shaped itself. The light became a small girl. She was 3 feet tall. Her hair was the white of new snow. Her robes were soft blue silk that the system rendered with frost crystals at the hem. Her eyes were the same winter glass that Celine's were, but with a softer cast. She arrived without crying. She looked at Celine first. She looked at me second. She looked at Damon third. She did not look at the crow because the crow had fallen asleep upside down on the throne's armrest, and looking at him would have caused her to laugh, and her sense of decorum had been 3 minutes old. What is your name, father? Adrian. What is hers? She nodded at Celine. Celine, what is mine? I had already known what her name would be. I had known since the slip on the ice in the cave with Elena. I had known since the ice demon bead had pulsed through the bond on the way home. Iris. She thought about it. She nodded. She accepted the name the way Damon had, as a thing she had been given and would carry. The bond at my collarbones added a third silver thread to the central braid. The braid was now 5 strands: Celine, Elena, Damon, the crow, and Iris. And the bond felt like a hand on my chest pressing very gently. Damon picked Iris up and put her on his shoulders. He named her his sister in the bond's inner speech register. She named him her brother. The throne room was quiet. Celine's voice was a single warm sentence into the quiet. My daughter. She set her hand on the small girl's hair. Iris closed her eyes. The throne room dimmed to the kind of dim a household goes to when the children have been put to bed. I left the castle at sunrise with 3 children in the bond and the household formerly larger than it had been the day before. I had a queen. I had a sword immortal. I had a son and a daughter. I had a death crow with undead manipulation. I had 2 pupils in my left eye and 2 queens at my collarbones, and a daughter who already knew her own name. The mask organization was 3 days away. Logan stepped out from behind a pine tree at the 3rd hour of our quest path. He wore a porcelain mask that covered the upper half of his face. He held nothing in his hands. He gave the kind of small bow a man gives when he wants you to know he is not threatening. He introduced himself, paraphrased, as a representative of the mask organization. He told me, paraphrased, that the organization had been watching me since the bamboo grove and had decided to extend a recruitment offer. He produced a sincerity gift. He raised one hand. Across the clearing, Olivia, resurrected since her death at the Rhinoceros Plains, collapsed where she stood. The system pinged her death a second time. He had killed her at distance, through the mask, with a mechanism the new pupil read as a soul thread severance the system could not flag because the system did not know the thread existed. I watched her drop. The new pupil filed the killing technique. Logan paraphrased the gesture as a demonstration that the mask organization could reach across distance and reach across resurrection and reach across anything I might think of as protection. He paraphrased the recruitment offer as a partnership. I paraphrased the refusal in my narration. I gave him one sentence aloud. No. He stopped smiling. The new pupil read the recalibration in his ghost energy. He summoned a snake demon and a crimson demon at the same time. The crimson demon launched a fireball the size of a small house. I closed the silver eye and opened the new pupil for the 4th time in the second life. The new pupil read the fireball as a structure of ghost energy organized around a burning intent. The new pupil also read that the crimson demon was the kind of creature that could be made to believe its own intent had reversed direction. I asked the pupil to show the crimson demon the version of its fire that was true, where the fire had turned around midair and was returning to its source. The crimson demon panicked. It tried to flee from a fire only it could see. The actual fireball, mid-flight and now uncommanded, dispersed into harmless smoke. Damon's lightning landed on the crimson demon's back while it fled. It died screaming at a fire that had never existed. Elena's sword took the snake demon at the same time. The clearing was quiet. Logan stood alone in the clearing. He raised one hand to his ear, speaking, paraphrased, into a comms line to a man somewhere distant, and gave a status report I read off his lips before I delivered the kill. The Thunder Ghost Spear took him in the chest. He died with his hand still half raised. System ping. Player Logan killed. Items dropped. B-grade demon mask fragment. Crimson heart. Snake demon contract paper. He resurrected somewhere off-screen. The new pupil felt the resurrection as a small distant pulse and filed the address. The Watcher was at the clearing's far edge. He was not Logan. He was not the same man who had watched Dominic die in the bamboo grove. He was a different Watcher with deeper ghost energy concealment than the previous one. Mask Organization's senior tier. He stood between 2 pines and held a long pipe in his right hand and watched me without blinking. I held his gaze for a count of 5. The new pupil read his ghost energy density. The reading came back as a man who had built his concealment to standards that did not exist on this server. The reading also came back as consideration. Not surprise, not threat, consideration. He turned the pipe between his fingers. The pipe glowed at its tip. He lifted the pipe to his lips. He inhaled. Smoke escaped from beneath his mask. He paraphrased, in a voice I felt rather than heard through the new pupil's depth of field, that we would meet on different terms in a different season. He turned. He walked into the pines. He did not run. I let him go. I knew his name now. The new pupil had filed it. He was Victor. He was Logan's master. He was one of the 3 names I had planned to put on the calendar for the second video, not for this one. I would meet him in the second video on different terms. In this video, the calendar said the bamboo forest was tomorrow at noon, and the Army of Punishment had 10,000 players in it, and Aiden had been the public face of the recruitment for the last 48 hours. The mask organization was the medium-term threat. The Army of Punishment was the immediate one. I logged out at sunset with the Crimson Heart in my inventory, and a name on my mental list, and a plan for tomorrow that would close out Arc 2's action peak. The old craftsman handed me the ink ghost sword at sunrise. The blade was slim and black, the crossguard a single line of blue-silver. The craftsman gave a small bow, and the kind of one-line direct quote a sympathetic NPC is allowed. It is finished. Use it well. I will. I gave the blade to Elena. She held it in both hands. She tested the weight. Her old sword folded. The new one took its place. She gave the craftsman a single short bow, and we left the smithy together. The bond on my right collarbone felt heavier than it had a minute ago. I walked toward the bamboo forest east of the village. I had a long arc appointment to keep. The bamboo forest was packed. The Army of Punishment was the largest mob the server had ever organized. 10,000 player avatars stood in concentric rings around the clearing the parchment had directed me to. They had every guild that had lost face to me in the past month. They had Aiden, resurrected since the village square, and now wearing the kind of upgraded armor a man buys when he has been promoted to public face of an army. They had 3 full guilds whose recruitment threads had begged for the chance to be on this slope today. They cheered when they saw me. The cheering was the sound of 10,000 players who had been told they were here to deliver justice for an entire region's worth of grievances and who had not yet realized that their grievances had been a marketing campaign. Aiden raised one hand. The cheering stopped. He walked to the front of the crowd. He started a speech that was not for me. The speech was for his army, to remind them why they were here, to keep their spirits up, to prepare them for whatever I was about to do. I let the speech run for 30 seconds. Then I raised my hand. The silver eye flared. The new pupil opened, both pupils visible to 10,000 witnesses at once. The bamboo forest went still. I gave the speech I had been carrying since the alley behind the noodle shop in 2024. I gave it not in the cadence of a guild leader, but in the cadence of a man who had earned the right to address the people who had come to bury him before he had become unburyable. The speech named what some of them had done in their previous lives. 3 of the names I had memorized off forum posts I had read in the months before my last death. The speech named what some of them would do tomorrow if they walked off this slope alive. The speech ended with a line I had practiced in the mirror. I am 6 paths, I said. I have entered the ghost path. I am not going to be the one buried this time. The silence after the line was the silence I had wanted. Aiden charged. The crow let out the first cry. 3,000 player ghosts dropped in a single expanding ring around me. The forest's birds, system-generated background entities, fell silent because they had been programmed to fall silent in the presence of soul-class apocalyptic tier output. The 10,000 player avatars stopped charging as the front lines collapsed under their feet. The middle lines tried to retreat. The back lines tried to push forward. The army was no longer an army. It was 10,000 panicking individuals. Elena raised the ink ghost sword. The immortal slaughtering sword formation was the system's name for what she did next. The blade did not move alone. It generated a circular array of giant translucent blades that rose around the clearing's perimeter and pivoted inward in slow methodical sweeps. 4,000 more player ghosts dropped in 90 seconds. The bamboo did not split because the blades passed through the bamboo without touching it. They were aimed at ghost energy density only. Mortal players, the human bodies behind the avatars, staggered to find themselves with empty shoulders. Damon's lightning caught the retreating backlines. Iris's ice arrows scoured the clearing floor between the front lines and where the backlines had been. The clearing had 3,000 players left after the second wave. None of them had a ghost on their shoulder. None of them had any idea what to do. I stepped forward into the cleared center. The Army of Punishment, now an army of refugees, parted for me without anyone telling them to. Aiden was at the front. He had survived the 2 waves because the crow's cry and the sword formation had been calibrated by Elena to leave him alive specifically so I could end him in person. I gave him a single sentence. I told you to walk. He did not walk. He charged. I let Damon's spear take him. The Demon King spawned at the kill threshold. 10,000 simultaneous ghost deaths in a single space had triggered the system's mass casualty event protocol. A crack opened in the sky above the clearing. The Demon King, a legendary boss the system normally reserved for end-of-arc encounters, emerged from the crack claiming the 10,000 deaths as his tribute. He was 40 feet tall. He had the kind of face the system used when it wanted a player to stop laughing. Celine materialized from my left collarbone. She set her hand against my chest and the bond went hot. Power share. The system flagged it, the queen lending her register to her contractor for one specific move. I closed both pupils. I opened them simultaneously, both pupils visible. The new pupil reached into the reincarnation eye's full evolved capacity and pulled. The sky above the bamboo clearing darkened. A colossal eye opened above the forest. It was bigger than any cathedral, both pupils visible, silver outer, black inner, slow turning. It was the system's rendering of what the reincarnation eye looked like when it remembered it was a reincarnation eye and not just a pupil behind a pupil. The Demon King looked up. The eye looked down. The Demon King was sucked upward into the iris and disappeared. Not killed, disappeared. The system's small print panel told me, in 3 sentences, that the boss had been removed from the field via consumption class effect. The eye closed. The sky brightened. Sunlight came back to the bamboo forest. The clearing was quiet. I sank to one knee. Celine's hand was still on my chest. Elena was 3 steps ahead, sword in hand, between me and any remaining player who might decide to be brave. None of them did. The world chat panel in my interface stopped scrolling. Then it started again. 500 lines a minute. 6 paths trended on every regional forum the system tracked. Footage of the eye opening was being mirrored to real-world video sites in 18 languages. The mask organization's senior officer, Victor, would receive the footage within an hour, and the Dragon Kingdom government would receive a copy within 3. I logged out at the cliff threshold. I ate 6 bowls of noodles in a row at the noodle shop. I went home. I did not check the news. I slept for 10 hours. When I woke up, the apocalypse had decided not to wait for the calendar. The news on my phone said the black fog had arrived during the night. The fog had spread across the city's eastern districts. Mass disappearances had been reported in 17 apartments before the police had stopped picking up the calls because the police were also disappearing. The Dragon Kingdom government had not yet held its emergency summit, but it was already drafting one for tomorrow. The Realm Merge had decided to skip 3 days off the original calendar because the Eye of Heavenly Tao at the bamboo forest had been the last energy injection it needed. I had bought myself less time than I had planned. I dressed. I called Wallace. He picked up on the first ring with the voice a man uses when his basement has just become valuable and he has remembered who told him it would. We agreed to meet at the antique shop in 20 minutes. I told him to have his men keep the basement door closed. I took the rental car out of the garage. The streets were empty in the wrong way. Not the empty of a quiet morning, but the empty of a city that had been told to stay inside and had agreed. Black fog moved at the edges of my vision the entire drive. The basement had changed. 18 months of stockpile, burial jade, Tang Dynasty antiques, pieces from 100 small tombs across 3 provinces. Wallace had bought them with my money and stored them in his basement, and the basement had aged them for the Realm Merge, the way a wine cellar ages wine. Each piece was now glowing faintly with absorbed ghost energy. Wallace was at his desk waiting. He did not pretend not to know who had walked down the stairs. He stood up the way a butler stands up. His 2 henchmen, both still alive, both still on his payroll, stood at attention behind him. I did not need to give him instructions. He knew the inventory list. He had been preparing it for 18 months. He had it on 3 handwritten pages stacked on his desk. I took 1,200 ghost jade pieces. I took an A-level teleportation ghost ring that he had bought from a private collection 3 months ago. I took a small carved lion that the new pupil read as A-rank ghost suppression item. I left the rest in the basement. I gave Wallace one direct order, paraphrased. Stay here. Do not leave. The fog will not enter the basement because the basement is now a ghost energy concentration zone the fog cannot penetrate. Your 2 men will help you protect the inventory. I will return. He nodded. I went back upstairs. The dock warehouse was where Wallace had stashed the larger antiques. I drove south. The streets were filling up with bodies. Some of them had collapsed where they stood. Some of them were running. A few of them, players from the game who had logged out when the fog arrived, had pulled their contracted ghosts into the real world and were using them to rob survivors. The new pupil read the rival gamer's ghost energy signatures from blocks away. I did not stop the car for civilians. I stopped the car for one rival gamer crew at a 4-way intersection blocking the route to the dock. Their leader bragged into the open air about having killed 6 paths in another city. The new pupil flagged him as a low-tier player using a stolen B-rank ghost. I closed the car door behind me. I let Celine materialize from my collarbone for the first time outside the game. She walked across the 4-way intersection, barefoot in the daylight. The rival crew's leader saw her. His expression changed. The new pupil read his ghost energy collapse 3 full seconds before his ghost actually collapsed. Celine gave him one direct quote, "Quiet, Imperial," that I would not paraphrase here because the line was meant only for him. She ended his ghost without raising her hand. His crew dropped their weapons. I gave them one sentence, "Walk." They walked. I drove the rest of the way to the warehouse without further interruption. The warehouse held a lizardman ghost, a full-blown ghost realm creature that had crossed into the real world during the merge and had set up residence in the rafters. I summoned Damon. The lightning took the lizardman's tail. Celine took the body. The crow ate the soul. We collected the warehouse's antique stockpile and loaded the most valuable pieces into the rental's trunk. I drove back to the apartment with 1,200 jade pieces, an A-rank teleportation ring, and a real-world demonstration that my family was no longer bound by the game's geometry. I went back to Wallace's basement at sundown. I had been planning the next part of his arrangement for 6 game months and 3 real-world weeks. I had picked up a human-faced cat demon at the warehouse, small, low tier, the kind of ghost a man without ghost tamer training can hold a contract on without the ghost eating him. I told Wallace what I was going to do. I told him in 2 sentences. I gave him 2 sentences to refuse. He did not refuse. I bound the cat demon to him through the silver eye. The contract sealed along his sternum. The demon settled on his shoulder. Wallace's first action with his new ghost was to bow to me. He had become, within the limits of what a real-world middle-aged tomb raider could become, a ghost tamer. I left the basement with the new pupil filing the contract as a recurring resource. I drove home. The fog had thickened. The streets had emptied in a different register from the morning. Not empty of life now, but empty of direction. The people remaining outside were standing where they had stopped. They had given up. The world had decided what kind of evening this was. The phone in my pocket buzzed. The phone said Vivian. The phone said voicemail. The phone said the voicemail was screaming. I let the voicemail play. I listened to the whole thing without interrupting. I started the car again. I drove east. The calendar had moved Vivian's reckoning forward by 18 months. The calendar did not care that it had moved. The calendar said the evening had to happen. I drove. The voicemail had been 4 minutes long. I had played it through twice before I started the car. The first play, I had listened to the words. The second play, I had listened to the spaces between the words, because the spaces are where the truth is. The truth was that there were 2 people in the apartment with her, and one of them was Brett, and the other one was a thing the system would have flagged as ghost class if I had been logged in with my interface up. The thing was a lustful demon. I had read about lustful demons in another life. They were B-class control tier ghosts with a habit of cornering small numbers of mortals in enclosed spaces. They were the kind of ghosts that had walked into apartments through windows during the first night of the merge and decided not to leave. The apartment building was the building Vivian had moved into 18 months ago in the previous timeline. She had moved in earlier this time. The building was the same. The window was the same. The fire escape on the north face was the same. I parked. I sat in the car for a count of 4. I got out. The lobby door was unlocked because the system that had locked the lobby door had stopped working when the fog had arrived. I took the stairs. The hallway was empty. I walked it without hurrying. I had no reason to hurry. The thing in the apartment had been there for a half hour and was not in a hurry either. The fluorescent tubes flickered above me. The carpet was the kind of carpet a building uses when the building has decided no one will look at the carpet again. The apartment door at the end of the hall was cracked open 8 inches. I stopped at the door. I did not push it. The new pupil read what was on the other side. 2 human signatures, both alive, both in the apartment's far corner. 2 ghost class signatures, both inside the apartment, both at the doorway side of the room, the lustful demons. I pushed the door open with one finger. Vivian was pressed against the far wall. Brett was in front of her, but not protecting her, pushing her, in the small backwards shoving motion a man uses when he is trying to put a body between himself and a thing that has cornered him. The 2 demons were on the other side of the room. The demons saw me. The demons stopped. The reincarnation eye was at full open behind both pupils, and the bond at my collarbones was visible to ghost-class entities through the cloth of my shirt, and the lustful demons were B-rank ghosts in a hallway with a man whose contracted family operated 3 tiers above them. They submitted on sight. They did not move. I stepped into the apartment. I closed the door behind me. Vivian saw me. She had not understood that I was the person walking through the door. She started to scream a word that was my name. Brett saw me a half second later. He understood faster than she did. He let her body go. He stepped to the side. He tried to negotiate. I did not let him talk. Celine materialized from my collarbone. She walked across the apartment floor without making a sound. The demons at the door watched her. She did not look at them. She walked past them. She stopped 6 feet from the corner where Vivian and Brett were standing. Vivian started to beg, paraphrased through what I read on her face before her mouth opened. Brett started to bargain, paraphrased through the small motion of his hands toward his pockets, where I knew he kept the wallet that I knew was empty. Neither of them was talking to me. They were talking to Celine. They had not figured out yet that talking to Celine was the same as talking to me. I gave Celine the order in 2 words. Finish it. She acknowledged in 1 direct sentence. The only line she would speak aloud in this phase. The line was for her, not for them. As you say, husband. The narration cuts. I stood at the kitchen sink. I turned the cold tap on. I washed my hands. The water ran clear because I had not touched anyone. I dried my hands on a dish towel that smelled faintly of Vivian's hand soap. I folded the dish towel in half. I set it back on the rack. The window above the sink looked out on a city that was on fire in places I could see and on fire in places I could not see. Somewhere on the 8th floor of an apartment tower in the Western District, 2 people who had killed me in another life had stopped existing in this one. They had stopped existing in the cleanest possible way. The narration had not described the kind of way. The narration would not. I felt nothing. I had imagined the closure as a fire. It was not a fire. It was the silence after a faucet has been turned off. Celine's voice arrived through the bond. Quiet, not declarative, not warm, not cold. The voice of a queen who had carried out an order and was reporting the result without inflection. It is done. Thank you. Do you want me to clean the room? No, leave it. As you say. I did not turn around. I did not look at the living room. I walked out of the kitchen with the dish towel fresh smell of my hands, and I walked past the door of the living room without looking at the door. I took the stairs. I left the building. In the lobby, the unlocked door was still unlocked. I drove home. The radio was talking about the apocalypse. I did not turn it on. I did not turn it off. The black fog moved at the edges of the windshield. The streets were empty. The car's headlights cut through the fog, and the fog closed behind the car, the way water closes behind a body. I went home. I went to bed. I slept for 10 hours. When I woke up, the world had not changed. I had not changed. The boy from the alley behind the noodle shop was still gone. The thing at the kitchen sink was the new shape. The bond at both my collarbones was warm. Damon and Iris and the crow were quiet in the central braid. Elena was a settled weight on the right. Selena was a settled weight on the left. The phone on the bedside table had 36 missed calls from a city number I did not recognize. I deleted them without listening to a single one. Arc 2 was over. I went looking for the Ghost Realm Rift Lord on day 8. The system had pinged a notification overnight. A Lord tier ghost was operating somewhere on the city's southern edge and was guaranteed to drop legendary loot for whoever killed him first. The new pupil flagged the Lord's ghost energy from 3 blocks away. The path between us was a pigman ghost wandering down a broken sidewalk, eating something I did not look at. I let Selena materialize. She froze the pigman with one hand. The crow ate the soul. I picked up the dropped loot. A small key, a loot flag pointing south. I walked south. Hannah's convoy was at the 4-way intersection. She was 23, a foot shorter than me, in a beat-up red wool coat she had taken off someone else. She had organized 12 survivors out of the Eastern District and was driving them south in 3 vehicles. She saw me at the corner and made a decision in 2 seconds. A decision the new pupil read clearly, even through the fog. She got out of the lead car. She told me, paraphrased, that her group had room and that I looked like I should not be alone. She explained who they were and where they were going. I let her finish. She had earned the courtesy of finishing. The other survivors in the convoy started arguing as I listened. Some of them did not want to bring me along. The argument was about whether I was a liability. None of them recognized me. The fog had moved fast enough that even the most viral footage had not yet penetrated to people who had been on the road. I told Hannah, paraphrased, that I appreciated the offer. I did not tell her about the skeleton knight that the new pupil had just registered approaching from the south. The skeleton knight rode out of the fog. He was 8 feet tall on his mount. The bone horse beneath him was the same color as the rider, old ivory and old grave dust. The system flagged the knight as epic tier, the horse as A rank. The knight carried a long sword the system flagged as a regional class weapon. The system flagged the encounter as a multi-party kill recommended for a guild raid. He rode toward the intersection. He swept his sword once across the front rank of Hannah's convoy. 3 of her survivors went down. 2 more were injured. The convoy started screaming. Hannah stepped forward. She put herself between the skeleton knight and me. I was the last person in the world who had ever been put between a skeleton knight and anyone in any timeline. I summoned the family. Celine materialized on my left, Elena on my right. Damon stepped out of the central braid in front of me with the thunder ghost spear lit. Iris materialized beside him with the ice demon bow. The crow climbed onto my shoulder. Hellpath. Well, Hellpath had not been created yet. The knight had to die without him. The skeleton knight pulled up his mount. He looked at us. The new pupil read the recalculation in his ghost energy. He had been expecting a survivor convoy. He had not been expecting a household. I stepped past Hannah. This will end faster if you do not move. She did not move. Iris's ice arrows took the bone horse's hip joint. The mount staggered. Damon's lightning blinded the knight's eye sockets. Elena's sword formation cut the legs of the horse out from under the knight. The knight hit the pavement with a sound like a dropped armory. The knight stood up. The system pinged the knight's regenerative ability, a passive that regrew his bones at 30% rate per second. Celine took 2 steps forward and broke the regeneration with a single press of her hand on his chest plate. The chest plate cracked. The knight's regeneration stopped. Elena's sword took the head clean. The system pinged. Boss kill. 6 paths. Server announcement for real-world apocalypse tier. Loot dropped. S rank dark sword. SS rank skeleton knight helm. A rank bone horse mount stone. The crow waddled to the bone horse's body. The crow opened his beak. He spent 4 seconds eating the horse's soul. He shimmered. He grew a ½ inch around the chest. The crow's undead manipulation ability flared. The bone horse stood up. The horse was no longer dead. It was no longer the skeleton knight's. It was mine. I climbed onto its back. The bond on my collarbones registered the new mount as a vehicle, not a contract. Hannah was staring. I turned the bone horse to face her. She had figured it out. The footage from the bamboo forest was on her phone. The household at my back was the household in the footage. The man on the bone horse with both pupils silver was the man the footage had named. She did not speak for a count of 3. Then she gave one direct quote. "You're him." "I am. You saved us." "I happened to be passing." She did not laugh. She nodded. The nod was the kind of nod a survivor gives when she has just realized that the small mercy she was offering has been answered with a much larger mercy she had not expected. I did not give her instructions about what to do next. I did not give her a reason to expect me again. I turned the bone horse to face south. The family followed. I rode. I picked up Damon's name for the horse. He had named it Lord on the way out of the intersection, a small joke the bond had carried into the inner speech register. I had not corrected him. The bone horse responded to the name. It had not had a name in 1,000 years either. I gave Damon the S rank dark sword we had taken off the knight. He held it the way he had held the B grade Slayer sword on the day he was born. He named it through the bond. "Father's gift," he said, and the bond's inner speech registered it as a sword that would carry his name through the rest of the production. Iris rode behind Damon on the horse's flank. She was small enough that she fit in the saddle's curve. She was holding the ice demon bow upright. Celine was on the horse's neck, one hand on the bone where the mane should have been. Elena was walking alongside, sword at her hip. The crow was on my left shoulder. The bond at my collarbones was warmer than it had been since the night Iris had been born. Arc 2 was over. I rode south toward the next horizon. The horizon was an SSS rank artifact in a museum the city had not yet evacuated, and a forest of black mist where a ghost king had been sleeping for a long time, and a floating ghost castle in a city of 10 ghost cities I had been waiting for since the alley behind the noodle shop. The bond carried me. The family was complete except for Sheay, who would arrive at the end of Arc 3. The crow tripped over my shoulder strap. He looked indignant. I steadied him with one hand. He settled. The bone horse's hooves struck the asphalt with the sound of a long bell. Arc 3 was about to start. The throne room had crossed into the real world. The realm merge had pulled the Empress's castle out of the game's geometry and set it on a hilltop 2 days' ride south of the city. The castle was the same. The throne was the same. The shaft of light from the high arched window was the same. The air smelled the same. I dismounted at the courtyard. The family followed. The crow waddled across the dead grass and slipped on a flat stone and complained. Damon laughed. Iris helped him up. I climbed the dais. The skeleton knight had dropped a ghost heart along with the rest of the loot. I had been carrying it in my coat pocket for 2 days. I took it out now. I held it in my open palm. It pulsed once, slowly. The silver eye in my left socket pulled toward it the way iron pulls toward a magnet. The new pupil under the silver one read the heart's structure as the catalyst the reincarnation eye had been waiting for since the alley behind the noodle shop. Celine materialized beside me on the dais. She set her hand on the back of my neck. You will not be alone for this. I know. Elena materialized at my right. I consumed the ghost heart. Heaven came down to stop me. The ceiling cracked open in patterns of silver fire. A column of lightning the size of a tower descended through the crack. Celine stepped between me and the column. She raised both arms. The column hit her chest. She absorbed it. The throne room shook. Elena's sword formation rose around the dais. The follow-up bolts deflected against the formation's translucent blades. Celine held the column. The system flagged her as queen-class absorbing god-tier energy. Her aptitude rolled up by a fraction during the absorption. The column thinned. The column ended. The ceiling sealed. I rose. My body had changed. The ghost heart was inside it now. The silver eye had finished evolving. Both pupils were permanent. My skin was a half shade paler. My hair had grown an inch. The system flagged me with a new title, Lord of Reincarnation. The system also flagged my contracted Ghost's combat tier as one notch higher than their previous baseline because the Lord form's ghost energy density elevated the entire household. Celine lowered her arms. I gave her one direct sentence. Thank you. You did not have to thank me. I did. Elena gave me one direct line, the only one she would speak in this phase. What do we do now? I thought about it. I gave her the answer with both pupils visible to the throne room. We dominate the world. The throne room was quiet for a count of 3. Celine smiled. It was the first time the audience would see her smile on page. I rode the bone horse to Shanghai at sunset. The bone horse could fly in the merged realm reality. The merged realm reality let ghost mounts pass through atmosphere the way fish pass through water. We crossed 800 miles in 3 hours. The horse landed in the museum's parking lot at full evening. The soldiers in the lot were under orders to stop ghost realm intrusions. They had not been briefed on what to do about a ghost realm intrusion that arrived on a skeletal horse with a household. They raised their rifles. They did not fire. I dismounted. Celine materialized beside me. I walked toward the museum entrance with the silver lord form open and the new pupil at full red. The senior officer of the unit stepped forward. He gave a paraphrased order. Stand down. Identify. Leave the area. I did not stand down. I did not identify. I did not leave the area. I gave him one sentence. I am here for one thing in the basement vault. I will be gone in 5 minutes. Do not engage. He looked at the household behind me. He looked at the bone horse. He looked at the silver eye. He gave the order to his unit to hold positions. He waved me through. I walked into the museum. The Simuwu Ding was in the basement vault, exactly where my future memory had placed it. It was a triple S rank artifact in the shape of a small bronze vessel with 3 legs and 4 sides. The new pupil read its ghost energy density as comparable to a queen-class ghost. I lifted it. I closed the vault behind me. I walked back through the museum to the parking lot. The senior officer was on a phone. He was reporting, paraphrased, to the Dragon Kingdom government's emergency response branch. He did not stop me. He did not signal his unit to stop me. I mounted the bone horse. The household followed. I flew home. I stood on the parapet at dawn with the Simuwu Ding in my palm. The family was on the parapet behind me. Celine at my left, Elena at my right, Damon and Cyrus in front of them with their weapons sheathed. The crow on the parapet's edge, looking indignant about the morning dew. Celine's voice through the bond was warmer than it had been since the dais. You are the Lord of Reincarnation now. I am. And the world below us is going to find out today. It is. I closed my hand around the Simuwu Ding. The next horizon was a forest of black mist, where a ghost king was sleeping for not much longer. I had 2 days before the ghost king's seal would crack. I had a household ready for what was on the other side of the seal. I had a kingdom to build, beginning with a floating castle in a city of 10 ghost cities I had been waiting for since the alley. I stepped off the parapet onto the back of the bone horse below. The horse rose into the dawn air. I rode east. The black mist forest had crossed into the real world along the eastern coast. The mist was a soft black fog at the level of the canopy. The system flagged the mist as a passive ghost energy drain that would kill an ordinary player in 20 minutes of exposure. The Lord form converted the drain into ghost energy and fed it back to the family. We rode in. Damon devoured a ghost jade deposit at the forest's first chamber. He leveled. Cyrus devoured another. She leveled. The crow ate a small ghost jade and complained about the texture. Selene checked the derivative ghost crystal she had picked up from the chamber's altar, a rare item that would later accelerate the third air incubation. She set it aside in the bond's storage. We walked deeper. The Vajra Minotaur was an elite tier boss with armored hide and regenerative musculature. I tested the Lord Form's new ability for the first time. The new ability was Samsara Flame, a white ghost fire that the silver eye could project across short distance, and that the system flagged as ghost energy burning rather than physical burning. I lit the Minotaur with Samsara Flame. The Minotaur's regeneration stopped. Its ghost energy started bleeding out instead of healing in. Damon's lightning took its knees. Elena's sword took its head. The boss fell. Crimson Heart drop. Ghost crystals. Iris collected them in 3 scoops. We walked deeper. The devouring bone demon was waiting at the bottom of White Bone Valley. He was epic tier, 15 feet tall, his skin replaced with overlapping plates of bone he had grown himself across centuries. He commanded a bone army, skeletal cavalry, bone dragons, marrow elemental servants. The valley filled with them when he stepped out of the bone archway. The system flagged the encounter as recommended for a guild raid. I had a household. Iris froze the bone dragons. The dragons fell off the ridge in 3 crystalline clatters. Elena's sword formation cut the skeletal cavalry into clean rows. Damon's judgment spears took the marrow elementals in single-shot kills. The crow ate the souls of the smaller bones and complained about the texture again. The bone army was gone in 3 minutes. The devouring bone demon was alone. His bone demon domain rose around him, a sphere of regenerative energy that reset his bones every second. The system flagged the domain as boss tier defensive ability. I lit him with Samsara Flame. The domain failed. The demon's regeneration started bleeding out instead of healing in. Selene materialized beside me on the bone horse, set her hand against my chest in the power share gesture I had felt in the throne room, and the Lord Form's ghost energy density rose by another notch. I summoned the Reincarnation Eye's 6 Paths of Reincarnation ability. The system flagged the ability for the first time on the server. I crossed the dry riverbed to the demon's still cooling body. I set my hand on his chest, ghost flame and silver light. The body reshaped. The demon stood up smaller than he had been, leaner, bone armored, the kind of servant the system rendered as a 6 Paths avatar. He knelt at my feet on one knee. He gave me the only direct line he would speak in this phase. Lord, the gates of hell answer to you now. His name was Hellpath. The system pinged. New asset acquired. 6 Paths of Reincarnation, 1 of 6. 5 paths remaining, deferred to future production. I gave Hellpath his orders. He rose. He stood at my right with his head bowed. 5 empty path slots stayed empty for now. The altar was the seal. The Ghost King beneath it had been imprisoned for 1,000 years. The system flagged him as legendary tier, the same tier as the Demon King in Phase 14, but older by an order of magnitude. The seal was leaking ghost energy at the cracks. I drained the leak. I held the 9-story ghost suppressing tower in my open palm. The tower absorbed the seal's overflow energy. The tower's growth potential threshold rose. The system flagged the tower as 9/10 of the way to SS rank. The seal cracked wider. The Ghost King roared from beneath the slab. The crow waddled to the seal's largest crack. He looked indignant. He lifted one leg. He passed gas. Single, brief, system rendered as a soul class minor emission, directly into the crack. The seal split in 2. The system pinged. Hidden quest updated. Ghost King's attack. Ghost King will break free in 23 hours. The chamber shook. I gave the family 1 sentence. We leave. I activated the teleportation ghost ring I had taken from Wallace's basement. The teleportation took us out of the chamber, out of the forest, out of the mist, and back to the Empress's castle parapet. The tower in my palm pulsed. The tower hit SS rank in mid-teleport. The system congratulated me on the upgrade in 3 small print sentences. The crow looked extremely satisfied with himself. I gave him a small piece of dried fish. He waddled off to eat it. Damon laughed for the first time since the throne room. Iris laughed for the first time since the snow cave. Elena's voice through the bond was dry. That fart accelerated the apocalypse. It did. I will not allow him to forget it. He will not let himself forget it. The household was on the parapet. The tower was at SS. Hellpath was at the courtyard below. The Ghost King was 23 hours from breaking out of his seal in the forest we had just left. Beginner Village, number 4. The village the Ghost King's territory was bound to in the merged realm geography was the village that would receive him first. Beginner Village number 4 was where my second life had started. I gave the family one more sentence. We will be there when he arrives. The bond at my collarbones agreed. I rode into beginner village number 4 at sunrise. The village had crossed into the real world along with the castle. The cobblestone crossroads was the same. The dilapidated inn was the same. The old village chief was on the steps of the inn waiting for me. He had aged in the merge. The system's render of him was less of an NPC and more of a man. He gave me a small bow. 6 paths. The seal cracked 20 hours ago. It did. The Ghost King will arrive in 2. He nodded. He had not been told the precise number. He had calculated it himself. My son will lead the militia, he said. His son was the guard captain, a man in plate armor with a halberd I had not seen on the village before. The merge had given the old chief a son the system had not had time to render in the original game. The new pupil read the captain's combat tier. He was respectable. He was also going to die in the next 4 hours unless I changed the calendar. I gave the old chief one sentence. You and your son will hold the wall until I tell you to fall back. Then you will fall back. The Ghost King is mine. The old chief considered the sentence. He nodded once. The captain saluted. The militia was already forming on the wall behind us. 3,000 respawned players who had answered the system's siege defense announcement during the night. They had no commanders other than the captain. They were going to do their best. I rode the bone horse to the eastern parapet. The family followed. Hellpath took the south flank. The household arrayed across the village's defensive line in the pattern I had been planning since the throne room. The horizon to the east was already darkening with the Ghost King's approach. The Hellgate Palace Successor Guild's leader walked up to my parapet at noon. He was younger than Dominic had been, less blonde, less prideful. His guild had reformed under his leadership in the 4 months since Dominic's death, and they had brought their full combat roster to the village's defense. He gave a small bow. He paraphrased an apology for what his predecessor had done. He paraphrased an offer of joint command. I refused. I gave him one sentence. He left without arguing. The new pupil read his ghost energy as offended but relieved. He had not actually wanted command. He had wanted absolution. I had not given him absolution. He left lighter than he had arrived. The horizon went black. The Ghost King's army cleared the eastern ridge. The system flagged the army's count at 3 million. The captain swore. The militia on the wall went silent. The captain's halberd lowered. He gave the order to brace. I stayed mounted on the bone horse at the wall's edge. I waited. The old chief came to the parapet at the hour mark. He stood beside the bone horse. He looked at the army. He looked at me. He gave me his last direct line, the only one he would speak in this phase. My son is brave. He is. You will keep my son alive. I will keep him alive until the wall falls. After the wall falls, he is in the old god's hands. The old chief considered the answer. He nodded. He walked back to the inn. The captain saluted his father as he passed. The old chief did not return the salute. He would not see his son again in this scene's lifetime, and I knew it, and the old chief did not. The Ghost King's army reached the wall. The first wave was Vajra demons. The militia held the first wave. The captain's halberd took 6 Vajra demons in arc cuts. The Hellgate Successor Guild took the eastern flank. The wall held. The second wave was bone dragons. The militia broke under the second wave. The captain pulled the line back to the inner courtyard. The wall stayed standing for 2 more minutes. The third wave was the giant demon king himself. He stepped over the eastern ridge with the kind of step the system uses when a legendary boss has decided to deliver his own arrival. He was 40 feet tall. He had the kind of face the system used when it had decided the world was about to be tested. He raised one hand. The wall fell. He brought his hand down against the parapet I had not yet stepped off, and the parapet shattered into stone dust, and the militia at the wall went over with it. The captain hit the rubble at the parapet's base, and his halberd was 12 feet from his body, and his father's prediction had been off by an hour. The old chief came running out of the inn. The Demon King's second strike took the old chief in the chest. I had run out of time to keep my promise. I closed both pupils. I opened the Reincarnation eye to its full register. I gave the family one sentence through the bond. Now, Celine materialized. Elena materialized. Damon and Iris stepped out of the central braid in their full battle forms. The crow rose into the air on his black ghost flame. Hellpath opened the gates of hell at the south flank, a black archway in the sky from which ox-headed and horse-faced demons began to march out in column. The household descended on the Demon King's army. The siege had begun. I gave the orders in 3 words. Iris, wave 1. She rose into the air. The ice demon bow lit. 3,000 ice arrows fell on the ghost army's flanks at once. Tens of thousands of monsters froze in mid-step. The frozen ones shattered when the army behind them ran into them. The eastern flank of the Ghost King's force fractured. Crow, wave 2. The crow rose. The crow circled the rubble of the wall. The crow opened his beak. The cry that came out was not the cry from the bamboo forest. It was a louder one. The system rendered it as Soul Class wide area attack at a tier the system flagged in red. Half the bird class flying monsters that had been carrying the Ghost King's airborne attack force dropped where they flew. Thousands fell into the rubble of the village. The sky cleared. Hell path, wave 3. He opened the gates of hell at the south flank. The black archway in the sky split. The ox-headed and horse-faced demons emerged in column. 200 of them, tall, black-armored, riding nothing because they did not need mounts. They slammed into the Ghost King's army's southern wing, and the southern wing folded. Damon, Elena, the boss is mine. You take the rest. They moved. I rode the bone horse off the rubble. The Demon King saw me. He raised his right hand. He brought it down. The strike took out a city block of rubble where I had been standing 2 seconds earlier. The bone horse moved faster than the strike anticipated. I lit him with Samsara flame. The flame caught the Demon King's regenerative armor on his right shoulder. The armor stopped regenerating. The shoulder bled ghost energy. He roared. He swung again. I did not stay where I was for the second swing. The bone horse circled left. Celine materialized on the saddle behind me. She set her hand on my chest in the power share gesture. The bond went hot. I drew the thunder dragon spear that Damon had let me borrow this morning. I lit it with the Lord Form's full ghost energy register. The spear's tip became a column of azure lightning shaped like a dragon's head. Damon's old technique scaled up by my borrowed power share. I drove it into the Demon King's chest plate. The plate cracked. The Demon King staggered. He tried to regenerate. The Samsara flame on his shoulder kept the regeneration from completing. I pulled the spear out. I drove it in again, lower, into the gut where the Regan Network's nexus was. The system pinged the Demon King at 30% HP. He was still conscious. He was still standing. The Lord Form personal combat ceiling was high, but it had a ceiling. I gave Celine the order through the bond. Now, we use the eye. She pressed her hand harder against my chest. The bond went hotter. The sky darkened. The Eye of Heavenly Tao opened above Beginner Village number 4, bigger than at the bamboo forest, slow turning, both pupils visible, the silver outer ring containing the slow black core that was now the center of the world for one full count of 3. The Demon King looked up. He had time to recognize what was happening. He had time to start the kind of roar a legendary boss starts when he understands he is about to be unmade. The roar did not finish. The eye was the iris. The iris closed around him. He was sucked upward into the silver and disappeared. Not killed, disappeared. The system rendered the consumption as a single event. The Demon King ceased to exist on this server. The eye closed. The sky brightened. Sunlight came back to Beginner Village number 4 for the second time in the production. The Ghost King's army, leaderless and fractured, broke. Iris's ice took the eastern remnant. Damon's lightning took the western remnant. The crow's localized cries took the central remnant. Hellpath's ox-headed legion took the south remnant. The army was gone in 20 minutes. I sank to one knee on the rubble. Celine's hand was still on my chest. She held me there. The bone horse pawed the broken stone beneath us. The bond at my collarbones was thrumming with the Lord Form's full ghost energy density and the afterburn of the eye summon and the queen power share that had channeled both. The household assembled around me on the rubble. Damon kneeling, Iris kneeling, Elena standing with her sword sheathed, Hellpath standing at attention behind Elena. The crow waddled across the rubble, looking indignant about a piece of wall that had landed near him. The system pinged the rewards. Server-wide announcement. 6 paths defeats legendary boss. Reputation maxed. SS rank legendary treasure chest unlocked. SS rank ghost clue map dropped. Dragon Kingdom government on real-world video registers a global event. I closed the panel. I crossed the courtyard to the old chief's body. The captain's body was beside his father. The militia survivors had gathered them onto the inn's steps. I dismounted. I stood at the edge of the steps, with both pupils settling back to their normal silver and the Lord Form's ghost fire dimming around me. I did not say anything aloud. I set my hand on the old chief's shoulder for a count of 3. The old chief had been one of the few NPCs the Silver Eye had ever read warmly. I had told him I would keep his son alive until the wall fell. I had broken the promise by an hour. The Eye filed the broken promise. The Eye did not forgive itself. A militia survivor, young, frightened, gave me a small bow. He paraphrased an apology for what they had not been able to do. I gave him one short paraphrased acknowledgement. I told him to bury his old chief and his captain in the western field where the carcasses had once been before Celine had cleaned them in another lifetime. The militia would do that. I walked back to the bone horse. Celine's voice through the bond was quiet. You did what you could. I did less than I had promised. That is a different thing from less than you could. She had a point. I did not say so aloud. The bond felt the agreement. I mounted the bone horse. The household followed. We rode out of the village at sunset. The system was still pinging me with rewards. The Dragon Kingdom government was still trying to call my real-world phone, the same phone that had Vivian's deleted calls. I closed the panel. I let the phone ring. The Lord of Reincarnation had a kingdom to build. The floating ghost castle was 4 days east. I converted my points at the system reward shop on day 2, 800,000 points. The shop's terminal accepted them in a single transaction. I purchased the Frosty Ghost Heart for Iris, an S-rank Ice Demon Bow for Iris, the Ghost Cherry Tree for territory cultivation, the Guardian Demon Beast Egg for territory defense, and the Contract Soul Crystal, the rare item that opened a 7th Ghost contract slot. I requested the Abyss trial entry. The system flagged the trial at 800,000 points, which I had just spent on the items, and offered to roll the request into a single transaction with the items as the trial entry stake. I accepted. The trial space materialized around me. Wave 1 was Abyss Crawlers. I gave Iris the Frosty Ghost Heart between transitions. She consumed it. Her form ascended, taller, paler, crystalline patterns spreading along her arms. The system flagged her as Triple S Ice Snow Demoness. Celine's voice through the bond was warm. My daughter has grown. Iris bowed to her mother. Iris bowed to me. Iris turned to face the Abyss Crawlers. She froze the entire wave in 3 breaths. Thousands of black insectoid bodies froze mid-stride and shattered. The platform was clear in 15 seconds. The system pinged Wave 2. Wave 2 was Abyss Bird Demons. The crow rose to meet them. He opened his beak. The cry took the entire wave in a single rolling sound. Black feathered bodies fell across the platform. The crow waddled to collect the souls and discovered, to his audible disappointment rendered as indignant quack, that the souls had vanished. The trial space's anti-soul economy mechanic, absorbing them before he could. He looked at me with the kind of expression a duck saves for personal betrayal. I gave him a small piece of the dried fish I had been carrying since the morning. He ate it, satisfied. The system pinged Wave 3. Wave 3 was the Wolf Demons. The 12-story tower, upgraded SS, what the 9-story tower had become 2 phases ago, suppressed the Wolf Demon's attribute regeneration. Damon's Judgment Spears took 2 of them in clean kills. Hellpath's bone-armored arms held the midline. Elena's sword formation cut the rest down in a single rotation. The platform was clear in 3 minutes. The system pinged the final wave. The Abyss Dark Serpent King rose out of the platform's stone center. He was legendary tier. He was 40 feet long, scaled in obsidian, the kind of creature the system used when it wanted a player to know that a legendary boss could be soloed only by a player who had earned it. I had earned it. The tower suppressed the Serpent King. The crow softened him with a localized cry. Iris froze the tail to the platform. Damon's spears chipped at the head's regeneration centers. The Serpent King's breath ability launched a cone of dark ghost energy at the family. The Lord form converted the cone. I fed the absorbed energy back to the family. Then I stepped forward with the Thunder Dragon Spear. I did not summon the Eye. The Eye was for legendary bosses I could not handle alone. The Serpent King was a legendary boss I could handle alone now. I drove the Thunder Dragon Spear into his forehead. The lightning column exited through the back of his skull. The Serpent King fell. The system pinged. Trial passed. 6 paths qualifies for entry to the 10 ghost cities. First player to qualify on the server. Special rewards. The reward chest unlocked itself in my inventory. The trial space dissolved. The trial dropped me back at the village. The old ghost village chief, a different one, a deferred backup the system had assigned to take the dead old chief's role, gave me a small brocade pouch and a paraphrased warning of a future calamity. He teleported me toward the 10 ghost cities. The world chat pinged a server-wide announcement. First player to leave the starter zone. Iris was beside me on the bone horse in her new Triple S form. The Ice Demon Bow was on her back. Her hair was longer. I rode toward the gate of the Heavenly Ghost City. The Heavenly Deer Ghost King received me in the audience hall. He was an SS rank Ghost King, ancient, in the form of a long-robed scholar with a deer's antlers rising from his hair. He gave me a small bow that the system flagged as the kind of bow a king gives to another king. He paraphrased a brief diplomatic exchange. Then he offered me the SSS rank mission. The mission was to reclaim the floating ghost castle from the Taoist Dark Rat Demon's faction. The castle would become my bound territory upon completion. I accepted. He gave me one direct sentence, the only one he would speak in this phase. "You will not regret the alliance." "I will not," he nodded. The heavenly deer spirit ghost, a temporary mount granted with the mission, materialized at my side. I left the audience hall. The floating castle rose out of the desert at sunset. The bloodthirsty sandworm boss emerged from the bones to greet us. I lit it with the heavenly omen flame. 20 smaller sandworms emerged behind it. Iris's ice demon bow scoured them with 3 volleys. We reached the castle gates. The Swordgate Ghost and the Bladegate Ghost stood at the entrance. Twin elite bosses. Iris froze the Swordgate. Elena's sword took the Bladegate's head. The crow ate the Swordgate's soul through the ice. He leveled to 17. He waddled triumphantly. The gates opened. We walked into the castle. The Taoist dark rat demon was on the dais. He was epic tier, lean, in long dark robes, the kind of antagonist the system used when it wanted a player to know the kingdom tier conflicts had begun. Behind him was a dark Taoist sacrifice array, a black stone ritual circle with the kind of power that could only have been built by sacrificing thousands of ghosts. He paraphrased an offer of negotiation. He paraphrased a description of his plans for the array. I refused. I activated the teleportation ghost ring from my inventory. The ring closed the distance between us in a single step. I drove the thunder dragon spear into his chest. The crow's beak ended his soul on the way down. The Taoist dark rat demon fell. The system pinged. Floating castle bound to 6 paths. Ghost kingdom established. The throne room belonged to me. I activated the sacrifice array with Damon. He stepped into the array's center. A dark phantom rose from the stone. System bound, not hostile, the kind of entity the array had been designed to manifest. The phantom granted Damon a blessing the system rendered as a tier upgrade. Damon ascended to S plus Thunder Demon Lord, taller, fiercer. The lightning around his shoulders crackled at a register the system had not had to flag for him before. He emerged from the array bowing to me. The dark phantom watched the bow. I gave the phantom one wary look. The new pupil read its ghost energy density as system bound, but unaccountable. A deferred mystery, not for this video. The phantom dissolved. Damon stood at full S plus on the dais beside me. I gave him a small paternal nod. He smiled. I planted the ghost cherry tree at the courtyard's center. The tree took root in 3 minutes. By hour 1, it had produced its first energy fruits, small, pale pink, faintly humming with ghost energy. The system flagged the tree's first fruits as A-rank consumables. I set the guardian demon beast egg at the courtyard's south wall. The egg cracked at hour 2. An SSS rank legendary creature emerged, black-scaled, 4-legged, the size of a horse, but with the proportions of something the system had not yet finished classifying. The guardian beast bound itself to the castle's outer skin and became a passive aura the system rendered as ghost energy density. The castle was alive. Celine materialized in the throne room and announced she was ready. I took the derivative ghost crystal from her bond storage, the rare item she had picked up at the Black Mist Forest. I gave it to her. She incubated. The light gathered in her hands. The light shaped itself. The light became a small girl. She was 3 feet tall. Her hair was black. Her eyes did not blink. Her form rendered in shadows the system flagged as Shadow Assassin class, SS aptitude. With a shadow stealth ability, the bond would transfer to me as a passive. She arrived without speaking. She looked at Celine first. She looked at me second. She looked at her sister third. She looked at her brother fourth. Then she gave me a single direct word. Father. I knelt at her level. What is your name? She thought about it. Sheay, she said. The bond at my collarbones added a 3rd silver thread to the central braid. The braid was now 8 strands. Celine, Elena, Damon, Iris, the crow, Hellpath, Sheay, and the bond itself. The throne room was as warm as the original Empress's castle had been on the night Damon was born. I stood up. I walked to the parapet. The sun was setting over the desert below. I woke up the morning after Sheay was born, and my level had jumped from 14 to 17 overnight. The territory had absorbed the past day's combat tier, and the new fruit from the cherry tree, and the guardian beast's binding aura, and the system had rolled the absorbed ghost energy into my level. The world chat erupted somewhere in the distance. I closed the panel without reading it. The courtyard was warm. Damon was teaching Iris a sword form on the courtyard's flagstones. He was being patient. She was being skeptical. The crow was on the parapet wall above them, eating one of the cherry tree's energy fruits and looking indignant about the texture, which was the crow's expression for everything that was not dried fish. Sheay was on the courtyard's far stone bench, watching her older brother and sister with the kind of stillness a small girl masters before she learns to walk. I sat on the bench beside Sheay. She did not look at me. She watched Damon's sword form. After a long count of 10, she leaned her shoulder against my arm. The bond at my collarbones was warmer than it had been since the day the silver eye had opened in the bathroom mirror. I went to the parapet to read the news. The phone in my pocket, still functional in the merged realm geography, the kind of small infrastructure mercy the merge had granted, showed me video footage of cities I had been to and cities I had not. The black fog had spread to all 7 continents in the night. A new continent had risen in the Pacific between 2 of the cities I had visited. Mass disappearances were running at a rate the news anchors had stopped trying to translate into statistics. The Dragon Kingdom government had held its emergency summit. The chairman had issued conscription orders for all gamers. The world was finally on the calendar I had been carrying alone since the alley. The phone vibrated. A government emissary stood at the courtyard's outer perimeter. The new pupil read his ghost energy density and his rank within the Dragon Kingdom's emergency response branch. He was the 3rd one this week. He carried a sealed letter from the chairman. I did not go to him. I let the new pupil read the letter from the parapet. The letter was paraphrased: a request for an audience, a description of the global crisis, an offer of state-level protection in exchange for the cooperation of 6 paths. I sent one short reply through the courtyard's outer messenger. Not today. The emissary received the answer. He bowed. He left. The new pupil watched him walk back through the apocalyptic fog, the way the mask organization's Victor had walked back through the bamboo forest in another lifetime. The world wanted me. The world was not going to have me yet. Celine materialized at my left, Elena at my right. We stood at the parapet in the formation we had not had to discuss. Celine's hand on the parapet stone, Elena's blade sheathed at her hip. The Heavenly Deer token was in my coat pocket. The small ivory bronze artifact the Heavenly Deer Ghost King had given me at the audience hall. The artifact that let me summon a Ghost King in emergencies. I took it out. I held it in my open palm. The token was warm. I looked at the desert below the castle. I looked at the earth visible through the merged realm sky beyond the desert. I looked at the token. The token's ghost energy density was the kind of density that had taken centuries to accumulate. The Heavenly Deer Ghost King had given it freely. The token had not been earned. It had been given. That had not happened to me before. Celine's voice through the bond was quiet. He saw what you are. He did, and he was not afraid of it. He was not. That is rare. It is. I closed my hand around the token. I would carry it. The household assembled on the parapet without anyone calling them. Damon at full triple S plus form on Iris's right. Iris at full triple S form on Damon's left. Sheay between them, Shay's hand in Damon's hand. The crow waddled up to the parapet and tripped on the token in my open palm and quacked indignantly. Hellpath stationed himself at the south end of the parapet, the kind of attention only an avatar gives. The bond at my collarbones added to itself. It was full now. It would not be more full than this. The braid was 8 strands of silver thread woven across both my collarbones and into the central network. Celine, Elena, Damon, Iris, Sheay, the crow, Hellpath, and the bond itself. I had not been alone in the alley behind the noodle shop. I had been alone every minute that mattered. I was not alone now. Sheay looked up at me from where she had set her hand on Damon's. She gave me her second direct word. Father. I knelt at her level. Yes. Was the alley behind the noodle shop very long ago? The new pupil filed the question. Sheay was 3 days old. She had not been told about the alley. The bond carried things sideways sometimes. Sometimes the bond knew more than the bond should know. Sometimes children did too. I did not lie to her. It was a different life ago. It is a long time. Are we what came after? Yes, she nodded. She set her cheek against my shoulder. The crow, somewhere in the parapet, stopped tripping on things. The wind moved across the white stone. The sun was at midday over a world that had finally caught up to what I had been carrying alone since the day I died and woke up in 2022. I had been a boy in an alley. I was not now. I was the Lord of Reincarnation. I had a queen and a sword immortal and 3 children and a crow with undead manipulation and a Hellpath avatar at the south end of my parapet and a token in my hand from a ghost king who had not been afraid of what I was. I had a floating castle in a city of 10 ghost cities. I had a cherry tree blooming in the courtyard below. I had a guardian beast in the castle's outer skin. I had a kingdom. I would have more. The Lost Desert was on the horizon. The 5 remaining paths were on the calendar. Cyrus was alive somewhere in a region I would reach. The mask organization was watching. The Dragon Kingdom was waiting. None of them were today's problem. Today's problem was nothing. Today was the parapet. Today was the family. Today was the only kind of warmth I had earned. I closed my hand around the heavenly deer token. The sun moved. Celine set her hand on my shoulder. Elena's hand was on the parapet's stone beside mine. Damon and Iris and Sheay were behind me. The crow had stopped tripping. The wind was steady. I had 2 pupils in my left eye. Both of them were watching the horizon. I was not the boy from the alley anymore. I was something the alley had never imagined. I was at peace with both readings. The sun was at midday. The kingdom held.